He hears a discordant note in the sea of souls, a world whose song bends toward a single will. Duty demands that he answer discord with order before the note spreads like rust. He frames the passage with webway calculus and oath binding, staking his name as collateral against the breach. Every crossing feeds predators. He accepts the cost and seals the equation with his bloodlight. The membrane tears, and he steps through. White walls rise like frozen surf above a plain of brown winter grass and sleeping graves. Horns cry from tiered streets, and banners crack in a cold east wind. A boy running bread to his mother stops mid-stride as the sky opens, scorched gold bleeding through cloud like a wound that cannot clot. On the sixth circle, a captain with a grey face, Faramir, son of the steward, turns from the battlement as a shadow passes far out over Osgiliath. 9 winged shapes circling, patient as carrion mathematics. The stranger arrives without falling, as if gravity remembers him as a maker. He hangs in the torn air, auramite catching pale sun, a war crown of cables and an eagle crest scorched darker by some old fire. Sound returns hard, a thunderclap, a ring of dust on the Pelennor, startled horses stamping, a cry from a white-cloaked guard that breaks like glass. He descends in measured steps, each leaving a print of heat that fades to frost. Soldiers make a ring without being told, spears angled out. A child reaches toward him, and then thinks of fathers, and pulls back. The aura is bright and wrong at once, like daylight seen underwater. He lowers his sword tip, plain in shape but too heavy for a mortal man to lift, until it rests on stone. "What city is this?" he asks, voice flat and carrying. "Minas Tirith, Tower of Guard," says Faramir, releasing breath he did not know he held. His bow is still in his hand. His eyes say siege, his voice says time. "Who comes upon our sky unbidden? The one who stands where men stand while they still stand." He lifts his gaze past Faramir to the east. There the mountain teeth bite clouds, and beyond them lies a lidless attention, far and patient. He feels it feel him. It is not the warp. Its malice is cleaner, cooler, a will with no hunger except victory. The absence of appetite makes it worse. The wing shapes bank toward the city. Screams come thin across the distance, too high to be the throats of beasts. They are pressure, and the pressure squeezes courage. He tastes the scream on the tongue like iron filings and old smoke. Faramir flinches. A guardsman steps back and brings himself forward again by will alone. He steps up onto the parapet, boots clicking stone. "Shut your ears," he says, and the word is command, not advice. Men clap palms against helms. He brings his left hand level with the east and closes empty fingers around a sun no one else can see. The air warps. A disk of pressure presses outward, not heat, but authority. Where it touches the shriek, the note fractures to static. A fell beast stutters its flight, clawing at nothing, then slams into wind and tumbles, tail snapping, black wings folding like burned paper. It sides the grass and gouges a dark furrow that steams cold. Fear breaks like a fever in the nearest ranks. Men shout, not words. The noise is relief given volume. Faramir does not shout. He watches the stranger's mouth flatten, and he sees the cost as close as a bruise. A ring of shadow just under the man's left eye, thin as a coal line, that was not there 10 heartbeats ago. Codex note: auramite warplate refracts hostile glamour. Unseen pressure bends and leaves residue at stress points. The creature thrashes, its rider tall, mailed, a crown forged of night with nothing beneath it, stands from where he was thrown clear. The air around him is colder by a degree that pain recognizes. No face, only the idea of a face. He lifts a blade that knows many names in whispers and looks up at the wall as if choosing a man like a nail. stranger looks back without blinking. Two powers measure the length of a city with their eyesight. Back from the wall, says a new voice, white hair and white staff. Gandalf the White moves through the ring of men like a field through wheat. They do not make way for him. They are remade to have made way after. The small one at his side, Pippin of the Shire, is almost running to keep pace. The wizard's gaze, when it meets the strangers, does not flinch. They have the politeness of swords laid down, hilts toward each other. I know not your name, Lord of wherever you claim lordship, but here you come at a precipice, and names await. Names are anchors, the stranger says. He does not give his. You are a steward of a flame. Of many flames, Gandalf replies, and then a half step colder. And off their limits, Faramir steps to the wizard's shoulder. He broke a Nazgul's fear with a gesture, he says softly, as if reciting a report he will have to justify before a bitter table. Captain General, we could use such a hand tonight. Hands come with wrists, Gandalf says, and wrists with arms, and arms have shoulders, and shoulders bow to a back sworn to something. What back is yours sworn to, stranger? To mankind, he says, and the word lands heavy in a city that has not said it in a long time. He does not elaborate. He cannot utter Imperium here. It will be a lie in this grammar. He can say duty and mean it. Your enemy is mine while that is true. A horn calls from below strained. Runners pound the stone. A lieutenant kneels and gasps. Osgiliath is lost. Faramir's patrol is cut. The enemy pushes with black banners and iron rams, the nine making circuits like hawks to stagger courage. We must ride, Faramir says. We must bring them back or break on the bank. Bring them back, Gandalf says immediate. We cannot spend men on a gesture to pride when the mountain moves. He looks at the stranger. Will you protect this city while we draw breath elsewhere? I will, the stranger says. He does not look at the White King of nothing on the field. He has measured him and filed him. He looks at the city's gate, the hinge of survival, and then at the people who live behind it. The baker's boy with flour on his cheek, the old woman with the knotted hands, the guardsman whose right boot sole is worn thin at the toe. He commits them to a ledger worse than any book of account, the book that never balances. He walks the battlements with the captain, putting hands on stone. He hears the war's voice, lime and sweat, patched in the black years, hairline cracks where winter worked. He knows where an army will test it because armies are rivers and stone remembers water. He orders the archers shifted 2 embrasures down for enfilade on a likely ladder line. He has them post oil where men will be tempted to waste it too early, and as a sergeant he can trust, guard the oil rather than the gate. He speaks softly and carries weight like a pulley. Your armor, Faramir says at last, because curiosity is a kind of courage. Its color is like the sun forced into metal. Did your smiths live long enough to finish their work? They died finishing it, he says. It remembers them as well as I do. He does not make it kinder with words. He cannot. A page runs up, almost tripping on his own fear. My lords, he bows. The steward requests. He looks at the stranger, and the request turns brittle. Demands. The presence of all captains and this new lord, at once. The hall of the kings is colder than the wind. Denethor sits like a knife sits in a sheath, not to rest, but to be at ready. His look skates over Gandalf like a quarrel that cannot pierce, and then finds the stranger. It stops and has to become something more than a look to go on. So, the steward says, a new wonder in a city already tired of them. Your city is not tired, the stranger replies, standing where a king would stand and making no pretense of kneeling. It is awake at the hour required of it. You answer a thing I did not ask, Denethor says and smiles with half his mouth. Wizard, you breed odd allies. I breed nothing, Gandalf says sharply. I guard. You guard too much and too close, Denethor says, eyes never leaving the stranger. What would you have us call you? Call me what you wish. He is not here to be known. He is here to hold. I will stand on your wall and break what comes to break you. And at what price? Denethor leans forward. His gold ring glints like the last light of a far fire. My son will ride into black jaws because the West has few teeth left. If I let you, unknown, unvouched. 4. Take charge of my wall and men. What bargain do I sign without ink? You sign the present, the stranger says. The future is unsigned in any case, though you think you have read it. A flicker of something in Denethor's face then, too quick for grief and too old for surprise. The steward's fingers tighten on armrest wood. We will take your help, Denethor says at last, because he is not a fool but a proud man forced to bend. We will call you nothing and expect everything. He stands. Go break my enemy against my stone. If you need names to shout, use my son's. He is worth 100 you could invent. At the gate, Gandalf touches the stranger's vambrace. The contact is like thunder held in skin. A question for a question, he says, eyes not leaving the street where Faramir's escort forms. Do you know pity? Yes, the stranger says. He does not explain that it is a thing he sets aside because his pity is too heavy to be borne through every fight. He adds, after a breath long enough to be considered a choice, I know it, and I use it when it will not destroy what it aims to save. Then we may share more than posture, Gandalf says. He swings up onto Shadowfax and is gone in a grey blur, the small one clinging behind, the white staff like a mast. The stranger turns to the gate and draws a line in the dust with the tip of his sword. It is a simple line. Men relax when they see it, not because a line defends a city, but because someone has placed a before and after on the ground. Shields high, he says. Spearmen with the archers until the first wave breaks, then spears down. Archers peel to the right along the parapet. Fire oil only when I say, if anyone lights it early, I will put him out. He says it without menace. The promise lives in the pattern of his words. Night does not fall so much as congeal. Torches flower along the enemy lines like angry algae. Drums begin, muffled at first, then insistent, then part of breathing. Out beyond the first barrow lines, ladders scrape together. He can smell the pitch on them from here. Orcs ring the shafts with bits of bone for luck, because they know luck hates to be invoked. The 9 return, circling wider now, careful as surgeons. Their fear is a craft. They lay it on the city like frost over ink and watch it bleed letters. He feels the weight of their unlight pressing against his mind like a thumb against a throat. He does not lift his hand this time. He speaks instead. Hold, he says, not to the men, to the fear. It is impertinence on a planetary scale. He makes the word an object and wedges it into the seam where terror enters. The seam gives a fraction. The fear thins like fog when a sun remembers its name. The first ladders slap the wall. The first grapples bite stone. He lets 3 bite. Men flinch. A captain shouts to cut them. He holds a palm out. Orcs climb, snarling. Eyes wrong yellow. Teeth file cut to keep them sharp. When they are halfway up, when their weight and will are committed, he nods. Now. Hooks are cut. Ladders kick back, taking a dozen with them into the dark. The fall breaks bones. The break breaks formation. Formation breaks strength. Strength breaks momentum. He does not laugh, but some muscle low in his back loosens. He can still read this language. Numbers and nerves, gravity and greed. Then the rams. They are not shaped like wolves or bears as his memory expects. They are shaped like fists, iron knuckles wrapped in leather, pushed by trolls whose hides glitter with some oily substance that keeps thrown fire from biting. He steps down off the wall and walks alone into the shadow of the gatehouse, where the stones remember kings. He places his left hand on the gate, not as a man touches wood, but as a craftsman touches a tool that may rebel. "You have held longer than the men who made you expected," he says under his breath. "I ask for more, and I pay." He pushes a thought into the grain. The hinges thicken. In an idea the hinges understand. The pins imagine themselves as mountains and become a little more like mountains. The crossbar, old, faithful, believes it has one more sunrise in it than it feared. Power moves, and where it moves, it leaves a skid mark of chill under his ribs that not even breathing melts. When he takes his hand away, his fingertips are dusted with splinters of frost that are not frost. The first blow lands and the gate shakes, but does not shiver. "Arrows," he says. And archers step to their slits and lay down fletched rain. The arrows do not do much to trolls. They do very much to the men driving them. The trolls hesitate. The men behind them curse and prod, and then count the cost and still push. Because Mordor is not a place where decisions belong to men. A rope snaps behind him and whips the air with the sound of a small, cruel whip. He does not turn. If a thing will not kill him, it does not need attention yet. If it will, he must already be seeing it. Something does not ring right in the scream coming down this time. He hears a second note under it. A word maybe, a name used wrong. A break in the grammar of fear. The crown in the field raises his black blade. Its edge eats moonlight. The blow that comes is not wood or iron. It is the idea of doors opened against will. It does not hit the gate first. It hits him. It slides along his thoughts like oil and looks for a place to catch fire. He catches it instead and bleeds heat to starve it. It still finds purchase. It takes a strip of something, patience maybe, and salts it. The line under his eye deepens. A second appears under the other eye, faint as a birthmark that has not chosen to be bold yet. He steadies. He knows this dance by another score. Nulls, blanks, pariahs, fields where the warp folds like wet paper. This is not that. This is a hungerless chill applied like justice. Justice can wound as cleanly as acid. He walks up onto the wall again and looks out at the crown in the field. "You are not the master," he says quietly, so only the stone hears. "You are the hand the master made to hold a knife." The King of Shadows does not answer. The 9 do not debate. They are instruments with very fine edges. He respects fine work. "Captain," he says to Faramir, who is not yet ridden and is not yet allowed to fear, "when you go, you will leave me your fastest runner for messages, and any men you trust with the truth." "What truth?" Faramir asks. It is not sarcasm. He is genuinely ready to be told one. "That men can break and still be counted," he says. "That tomorrow is purchased by today's accounting, which is imperfect. That I will hold, but not forever." Faramir nods once. "The truth we live by," he says. "The truth we forget to say aloud." He looks toward the east. "I will bring them back. Bring more hearts than bodies if you must," the stranger says. "Bodies are made again slowly. Hearts must not be allowed to be taken once. They are never quite returned." Shadowfax stamps at the gate and then is gone with a white storm on his back. The small one waves, as if he could change the world with sincerity. The stranger allows himself one thought, that sometimes that might be true. He files it in a place where it will not interfere with killing. Denethor's messengers move the city like hands on a board. He watches the patterns and erases too with a word. He consolidates archers where a captain has spread them thin to cover pride rather than angles. He swaps a nervous lieutenant at a vital point for a quieter man who smells like iron and bread. He does not shout. He never has to. Men obey not because he frightens them, but because disobedience would feel like lying to a page that will be read aloud at the end of the day. The rams come again, now with shields over them and singers behind them. Orc voices chant in a cadence meant to mock. Men on the wall find their hearts trying to beat to that drum. He counters with a rhythm tapped on the stone with his knuckle. 3, 5, 2, 3, 5. It is a counting game a father would teach a child to help with sleep. The men pick it up because they suddenly remember fathers. The mockery fails because it meets a thing that is not trying to be its opposite. It is trying to be itself. Orcs do not understand this and so become angrier, which makes them worse at ladders. The 9 break and reform higher, as if seeking a pressure point between constellations. He refuses to chase them with light again. Not yet. Every push leaves more cold beneath the eyes. He needs his anger later. He keeps it by his heel like a waiting hound. Riders come in from the east, sparse and hard used, faces grey with exhaustion, flanks bloody, arrows in saddles and sometimes in men. Faramir's banner does not appear. A knot develops low behind his breastbone. He does not know these people, and yet his chest tightens, as if he will have to explain them to someone he respects. A cry from the first circle. Open, open. A counter cry from the gatehouse. Hold, hold. The stranger throws a look that strikes like an order, and the gate holds. A heartbeat later, a rider slams past a closing wedge and falls into the entry, with 3 men pulling him clear before the wood meets the stone again. Captain, the rider says to no one, because the captain is not yet there and must be conjured by the naming. Captain is coming. He comes. Faramir rides into the courtyard with 4 men, all arrows spent, 2 horses dead on their feet. He falls when he dismounts, because if he did not choose to fall, his body might decide not to and take a worse price later. The stranger is there. He does not catch him like a friend. He arrests his fall like a craftsman saving a workpiece. He places 2 fingers at the base of Faramir's skull and makes a small gift. He turns the pain down without removing it. Faramir's breath steadies. The gift costs the giver the coin of temperature. Frost writes a brief, private rune on the inside of his lower lip and then melts. The bridge, Gandalf's voice, coming down the light like a blade. He is off Shadowfax, staff in fist, eyes hungry for a report he can make better by speed, if not by wish. Lost, Faramir says. He looks at the stranger like a table equal to the weight set on it. But fewer were lost than would have been. His word held men who were ready to shatter. Then we have earned ours, Gandalf says. Spend them as if they are stolen. He looks up at the wall, senses the pressure there, and grimaces. The 9 are patient, but their patience is hatred, and hatred can endure. I must go up again. Denethor will go mad if I leave him alone with his own mind. Madness is a path, not a destination, the stranger says. Someone taught him the first steps. He thinks of Palantry as objects he does not know yet, and then realizes he does in a way. Stones that echo Psi beacons, but without cushioning ritual, without choir safety, without warding nulls. He files that thought under later and bars the drawer. The city breathes like a wounded man in winter, shallow to save heat, deeper when it forgets itself, then shallow again in alarm. He moves among companies, straightens spears, adjusts grips, makes 2 men switch positions because one is left-handed and the other looks away with his right eye when he is afraid. He ties a child's scarf tighter with hands that once sealed oaths for planets. He is a machine calibrated for enormous loads, working now in a human range. The machine likes this. It remembers why it was built. Then the earth trembles 2 streets away. Not drum, not ram. A weight on wheels with spite in it. He feels the intent the way a sailor feels tied under a keel. The enemy brings something that is not a thing, but an idea with mass. The men say the name in whispers that don't want to be shared with air. Grand. It is not a ram so much as a story about breaking gates that has learned to walk. He steps toward the gate to meet the story. He understands stories. He has written them in blood. He knows you cannot stop a story. You can only edit it by living a better one against it. He looks at the hinge again, feels it groan in thought, and says quietly, "One more." The hinge obeys, not because it fears him, but because it remembers kings as much as he does. A dull, obscene impact. The bar jumps, the men jump, the wall jumps. A second impact, slower, heavier, more exact, like a judge bringing a sentence down with care. He pushes his hand against the wood again and gives not strength, but stubbornness. He has a great store of it. It looks like mercy from the outside, and is in truth a kind of pride that refuses to let the bad story become the whole story. On the field, the crown nothing raises its arm, and the armies of Mordor shift and make space for a shape to move through them. He sees it even at this distance, a black tongue of iron biting the ground where it passes. The thing is named, and names have power because they give courage to the wrong ideas. He cannot unname it, not tonight. He can only be thicker than its consonants. "Oil," he says quietly, and the sergeant he chose earlier uncaps a jar without looking left or right. Men hold breath. Torches lift. "Not yet," he says. Breath returns, shaking. He waits a beat, then another, then throws a look over his shoulder that says, "Now." And he adds aloud for clarity, "Now." Fire falls. It runs along wood and rope and anger, and for a moment, the story pauses because stories also fear pain. The Nazgûl scream in a chord that has murder in it. The cord presses through his skull and tries to make his childhood die. He has had worse childhoods than most. It fails. It leaves something behind anyway, a trace line of so cold where thought meets will. He memorizes the contour of the wound. He'll need that later. Wounds teach. He does not lift his sword much. When he does, it is to cut a thing that must be cut, because no one else can reach it from where they are, not because he needs to show a shape against torchlight. He kills like a man mending a wall, with attention and the expectation that he will be called to fix it again in the morning. Men see this and fight better. They stop performing their bravery for their own idea of themselves and begin doing it for work. An hour crawls like a lizard on hot stone, then another. The dead pile up in modest ways, not like epics, more like housekeeping with bones. He refuses to let the gate become a tomb. He orders bodies moved aside with a gentleness that has edges. He drinks once from a skin that tastes like leather and old apples. He does not remove his helm. He is no one here. He is service in a shape. On the 4th hour, a horn answers a horn from far south of the city. A note thinner than courage but bolder than hope. A reply from the walls like a hand held up in a crowd to be found. He feels the pattern of the war change, just a hinge click. The enemy does not falter. The enemy does not need to. The enemy has time. He has less. He looks to the east again, and the eye, he cannot call it anything else now, meets his look. It is not curious. It is not angry. It registers him the way a machine registers weight. It adjusts the load accordingly. He feels the adjustment as a pressure on his oath. Somewhere in him, a piece that has never asked permission to live asks for forgiveness. He does not grant it. He cannot. He needs all his parts alive and disobedient. Gandalf returns to the wall, white hair damp with sweat, face alight with a kind of joy that only men who love men feel in war, when men do not fail. "You hold," he says. It is not a question. "We hold," the stranger answers. He inclines his head the smallest degree to make the "we" mean what it must. "And you bleed in a way I cannot see," Gandalf says, and his mouth tightens, because pity is a tool and a peril. "What price have you set on your sentence?" "As much as it takes," he says. "As little as I can get away with." He looks at the Nazgul and then at the gate and then at Faramir standing again, because men stand sometimes beyond what standing is. "Tonight I will not break. Tomorrow may bargain with me. I will bargain back." Gandalf leans his staff against the Merlon and looks at him sidelong. "You do not sound like a man with use for mercy." "I have use for outcomes," he says. "Mercy is a method, not a law. Use it wrong, and you build only thrones for future tyrants. Use it right, and men live well enough to build their own laws." His voice changes half a note. "Do not ask me to spare what will kill your children later. Do not ask me to kill what will learn not to. I'm too old to ask a man to do either without thought," Gandalf says, and the faintest smile ghosts his mouth even as grief sharpens his eyes. "We will argue later, if later arrives. Later arrives if we make it," the stranger says. The drums change. The 9 spiral wide and inward again, the pattern of a hunting hawk that has learned patience from a river. The crowned emptiness raises its hand, and the fires along the ram gutter and then surge higher, as if oxygen has learned to love spite. The story returns to its pacing. He lifts his hand for the second time, because a story that insists must sometimes be answered with light. "The Titans," he opens his palm, and the air above the gate becomes thick and still. Snow would fall slower there. Arrows will hang a heartbeat too long and then move again. In that stillness, the scream breaks against something that refuses to vibrate. It is like crying underwater. It cannot fully be done. The crown does not like this. The crown raises its blade. He feels the cut begin in the air long before the iron would land. He sets his blade to meet it without ever touching metal. The cut stops, but it does not forget that it was made. It turns into a line on his cheek, very fine, very straight, a pale mark that will not redden, because there is no blood under it, only cold. He touches it with 2 fingers. He learns its length. He files its angle. He is a man who learns as he is being hurt. It is his most important virtue and his most terrible flaw. Somewhere behind him, tucked in a doorway with a tray of stale rolls he did not deliver, the baker's boy watches a god bleed a line that looks like something a baker puts on a loaf, so it splits well in the oven. The boy will tell that to his mother if they both live. She will think it the strangest holy thing she has ever heard. Night inches toward dawn on knees. He feels the world's fabric fray at stress points, men's hearts, ropes, promises made too quickly. He knots what he can. He lets some things go because to hold them is to lose more later. This is the arithmetic that does not show in songs. He will write it on his bones if asked. Out on the field, the enemy tightens, not withdrawing, not rushing, like a hand that has found a door and is going to knock in a rhythm that will get the door to answer on the door's terms. He recognizes intelligence in that patience. The master behind the hand has felt him now and is adjusting its siegecraft to include him. This is respect, and it is a promise of worse work. He does not smile. He never does when he is respected by an enemy. It means he has to respect them back or lie about the war to himself. And he does not lie to himself because he must save his lies for others, and even then he spends them like rubies. Dawn comes thin, then thicker. Men begin to blink too much because the light does not match the night in their heads yet. He does not blink at all. He is an old machine, and all his lubricants are myths. He turns to Faramir and, in a voice that is almost gentle, says, "When you sleep later, dream without blame. I asked it of you. I will carry it if I must." "If there is sleep," Faramir says, and the way he says it makes the stranger want to give him a different world. He cannot. He can only kill better. From the east, the shadow deepens contrary to the sun. The crowned nothing moves nearer, not afraid of arrows, because fear is not a thing it recognizes as a real object. The rams gather again. Drums coordinate with horn. He feels the pattern of the true assault locking into its grooves. The hours before were not feints. They were shaping blows, teaching blows, cruel lessons the craftsman gives his apprentice by letting the apprentice bruise himself to learn when not to put his fingers. The true blow is now. He breathes out once. He lets the light leak between his fingers like the smallest of mercies. He calls to the gate with his hand and to men with his voice. He gives them a forward tilt to lean their fear against. He squares his shoulders. He is not tired. He is past tired and into the country beyond it, where things are very simple and everything costs. On the field, something far behind the lines makes a different sound. Not drum, not iron. A voice made of ash and order speaking to forces like fingers. He feels the first tickle of a greater will still. Not the crown, not the nine, but the eye turning all the way to see what weight has stepped onto its board. The world's pressure changes by the width of a hair. Hair can slice skin if pulled fast enough. This hair is drawn slow. It will still cut. He lifts his sword and does not make a speech. Men will make speeches about this later. He must leave them room. He says only, "Hold the line you stand on, not the one you wish for." It is enough. It is exact. It is work. The first real hammer blow falls. The gate answers in the language of oak and oath. He answers in the language of light rationed to last until it must not. The city holds, but the story is not done bending. He feels the hinge of the day slide under his heel. He puts his weight on it and waits for the other side of the story to arrive with the speed of a mountain. The true hammer falls at dawn, and the gate holds because a man decided it would. The ram backs, wheels biting divots, then surges with trolls chanting some broken law. He feels the blow begin as a thought in another's mind and dampens the air ahead of it like a hand pressed to a drumhead. Impact diffuses. The second bar shudders but does not scream. Stone dust hangs glittering, then settles fast as if ashamed to be seen. He walks the wall and robs panic of its errand. A ladder bites. He lets it live, then lets it tear free. A troll shoulders into a culvert mouth. He kills the wedge of bodies behind it with a 30-heartbeat choke of stillness and releases before the men there forget how to breathe on their own. Each use writes the coal deeper under his eyes, a charcoal crescent becoming a bruise that reason cannot explain. Gron's fire dares the oil again. He refuses the rhythm the enemy wants. Strike, answer, strike. He waits until the trolls lean in to admire the work of their own courage. He signals and the fire goes not at the head but down the axle, taking pitch to the place men touch, not iron. The handlers drop. The trolls lurch, confused by pain that is not theirs. Momentum stumbles. For a minute the great story is a farce. Men laugh in short, unbelieving wheezes that clean their lungs more than any sermon. On the third shuddering pass, the ram bites too deep. A bolt shears somewhere hidden. He feels the gate's faith falter. He lays his palm flat and gives it belief borrowed from his oath. It takes, but the transfer is not neutral. In him, something goes quieter, not with peace, but like a room closed to visitors. He breathes, and the breath does not warm him. He saves men one at a time, as if that were a sensible thing to do in a siege. A battlement stone slips. He wedges it with a flat pressure until the 2 guards scramble clear. Then he lets it fall and crush 5 orcs climbing wonderfully well. A pitch jar slops. He arrests the splash around a boy's face and lets it burn his sleeve instead. He never looks at the blister. A runner tangles in a coil of rope at the worst corner. He cuts the rope with 3 fingers straight, and the man never knows he was dead and reissued. He calls for a sally. Not the pride-drunk kind Denethor hates, the surgical one that costs iron and gives time. 30 horse, no banners, no horns. Targets pre-selected while the enemy makes ready for its next big sound. The gate opens like a held breath, and he is in the saddle of a borrowed destrier that hates him and obeys anyway. They burst into the grey wedge between siege towers, hooves biting frost and flesh. He fights as if counting. The first tower's rear pins, then pulley lines, then brace, all at the same height, so a single collapse will force the second tower's crew to choose between saving themselves or losing the engine. He levels his blade at a knot of uruks pulling handcarts. The carts burst, not from heat, but from a pressure differential that makes barrels believe they are at the bottom of the ocean. He leans and takes an arrow meant for Faramir with the flat of his pauldron. Wood splinters, and a man's life changes from none to one. A troll steps into his path with a hammer like a decision. He never meets raw strength with raw strength if he can meet it with angle. He sidesteps at the hoofbeat before the swing lands, plants his sword point behind the troll's knee, and turns the creature into its own fulcrum. The leg goes sideways. The hammer finishes the work on its owner's shin. The troll howls a lawsuit of rage. He allows himself the thought that it is almost human and kills the thought first. They tear the braces free and lash 2 towers together with their own hauling ropes. He drives the wedge of horse through and lets geometry do the rest. The pair lean, share weight, then take each other down. One falls inward, the other falls outward. The collisions are not symmetric. The outward one meets a hidden stack of fire pots waiting to be rolled. The knight acquires a son. The inward one crushes its own crew and opens a clearing where archers had no angles before. He rides their small firelight like a map. They are out again in under 6 minutes, which is the difference between clever and dead. The gate coughs them back into safety with the creak of timbers that have begun to talk about retirement. Men on the wall stand taller. Denethor's lips tighten as praise threatens to escape him, and he throttles it. Gandalf allows himself one bright look that is not hope, but the cousin you introduced to hope, so it learns manners. Codex note: battlefield pressure modulation deflects force by altering local compressibility. Energy disperses across a constructed contour and bleeds as sound. Dawn comes thin, then bright, then thin again, as smoke decides whether to be cloud or cloak. They hold a quarter day, then the enemy withdraws 200 paces and drills in silence like a knife being honed. He uses the hours like coins slipped to starving children. He rotates men in 12s. He confiscates wine, then gives it back warmed and watered in thirds so the hands holding spears still know they have fingers. He has the carpenters cut wedges and drives them into beams. He judged 2 honest with their age. He eats a heel of bread without noticing until the baker's boy beams and runs to tell his mother. The gold man eats bread like a man. The war council meets in a room that used to be for weddings. The tapestries are rolled against walls to keep torch smoke off the threads of happier days. A map lies across a table. Oiled leather corners simple and good. Denethor stands because sitting would look like yielding. Faramir leans on the table with the patience of a man who knows how to do what is next whether or not his hands will listen. Gandalf is cool fire. A lord with a swan on his cloak waits by the door. The Prince of Dol Amroth arrived with a night march and no trumpets. The stranger stands where a window would see what it is defending. He has cleaned his sword with rag and sand. He has not removed his helm. He has not taken it off since the breach. Skin has grown used to the weight. Taking it off would feel like indulgence. You bought us ours, Denethor says. He uses the second person singular like a scalpel. How many more can you buy, and what coin will you spend that leaves us anything after? As many as your men can use, he answers. If they waste them, I will stop buying. If they invest them, I will mortgage myself. Gandalf's mouth quirks and then straightens, because he will not smile in this room. Your method, he asks, as if asking about a tool, not a man. He wants walls to understand what holds them. Pressure in the air. Belief in wood. Timing. He looks at Faramir. Discipline. Precision saves lives better than valor. Tell that to my father, Faramir says, not bitterly. Denethor's jaw flexes once. He is not stupid. He knows when words are true even if they do not love him. Imrahil speaks for the first time. We saw your sortie, he says simply. I have lost fewer men today than I have any reasonable right to lose. I will not thank you in language fit for tapestries, but I will say this. I will put my men where you point them, and I will ask where you put them after I point them, Denethor says, because governance is a habit, and he is not going to let a stranger take it entirely from him, even if that stranger bleeds victories. The stranger looks at the map. He taps 3 points with a knuckle. Here the enemy uses men from the east. Here southern pikes. Here orcs and worse. The men in red carry duty along with fear. The men in black carry only fear. When the red break and throw down arms, take them, bind them, treat their wounds. He looks up. The black you kill. Mercy for some, death for others, Denethor says softly. Who judges? You? Judgment is a job, he says, not a right. If we judge wrong, we die later, slower. If we judge right, some will live to do the work of making me unnecessary. Faramir studies him. And prisoners, orcs, trolls, these are not men led astray. Orcs are the knife's edge of another will, he says. You do not put knives in a drawer with children. You break them and throw them into a pit. We will show pity where it will not feed the mouth that will eat you. Language careful, Gandalf murmurs, for the benefit of those here who hear pity and think it soft. Pity and mercy are not the same shape as indulgence. The stranger nods. Mercy is costly. Indulgence is cheap. If it's cheap, it's probably treason. Denethor actually laughs once, a small bark. Wizard, he says without taking his eyes off the stranger. You have brought me a man who speaks my dialect. A man who understands cost. Gandalf corrects. He turns to the stranger. And yet, your methods cut close to edges. I felt your hand in the air like frost. You do not belong to this music. Each time you lay your will upon matter here, you force it to sing in a foreign key. There is a price. I pay it, he says. He does not add, until I cannot. He knows the line in his cheek and the crescents under his eyes are not style. The price is not only yours, Gandalf says. He steps nearer. His voice lowers. Power brought from outside bends the inside to meet it. The enemy knows this song better than either of us. He will hear your notes and weave a counterpoint that makes your strongest virtues serve his oldest crimes. Then I must be exact, he says. Domination is not rule. Rule is the art of making men willing. Domination is the laziness of despots. I will not play his theme. You have played themes, Denethor says, and it is not a question. He does not know how he knows, but he knows. Yes, he says. I learned to stop when the song ate the singers. Silence folds around that and cools it. A runner bursts into the room, trips, falls, gets up, because this is a room where he must. He holds out a small disc of glass like the eye of some patient predator. It is clear, not smoked. The runner's face refuses to reflect in it, like water that declines to show you yourself. From the gate, he gasps. This spoke. We broke it off a standard bearer's staff. It is wrong. Gandalf recoils a fraction. Denethor does not. He leans in as if smelling a wine he suspects, but cannot prove is poisoned. The stranger takes the disc and knows the pressure that coils inside it without being told a name. Voice. The failure of distance. A persuasion engineered by an engineer who learned it in heaven and forgot why it was forbidden in hell. It speaks without sound. The room seems to correct itself to make room for it. Words braid around thought and try to give it a nicer place to sit. It says, "There is peace if you obey." It says, "Your oaths can be made pure by giving them to the smartest mouth in the room." It says, "Order is a thing best achieved by one throat and many ears." The stranger's jaw tightens, not at the temptation, at the neatness. He loves neatness where it belongs. Here it is caged cruelty, declawed and fed sugar. The voice bends toward him. It tastes his oath like a tongue to a coin. It finds purchase along the seam where he bound himself to the breach. That seam is open because he must keep it open to keep moving. The voice slips a barb into it, a conditional. Obey the greater order, and your work will become easier. A man who has carried the weight he has carried longs for easy, like a starving man longs for bread. He does not move, because longing and motion are not the same. He closes his fist around the glass. It tries to become air inside his fingers, so it can slide and be near his ear. He will not allow it. He speaks where all can hear. "Saruman," he says. The name makes Denethor's eyes flicker, and Imrahil swear under his breath without being punished, because some names are permission to swear. "Your king names my rival," Gandalf says. Orthanc sends his voice like smoke. It will try to make your oath his instrument. It will not even think itself wicked while it does it. "Wizard of many colors," Denethor says dryly, because if he cannot stab an enemy with a spear, he will stab him with a sneer. He sends us glass while we bleed. The disc warms. The voice coils for a thrust. The stranger opens his hand and pushes a flat negation at it. Not light, not heat, a refusal of modulation. The room snaps a little, like a joint set. The voice slithers and finds less place to lie in. It is still there. He cannot silence it without binding himself tighter than he dares. He sets the glass down. He looks at his hand. There is a faint new mark across his palm, not burn, not cut, a line like the one on his cheek, as if the world is sketching him in with chalks he did not approve. "Break it," Denethor says. "Not yet," Gandalf says immediately. "We can learn from it, and it may be a tether through which a certain tower tugs. I would know the pull before I cut it. While it sits, it speaks," Denethor says. "I have had enough of speaking in my house. It will be bound," the stranger says, and wraps the disc in an oiled cloth, which makes the air around it move as if polite company had arrived where a brawl hoped to be. "But do not forget it. He has a voice. Your enemy wears silence as a crown. They work together, even if one thinks himself independent. We will need to counter both," Gandalf says, and his eyes on the stranger say, "We will also need to counter the way you counter them." The council fractures into smaller work. Imrahil maps his men to ramparts. Faramir moves courier relays like veins. Denethor refuses to sit and refuses to tire. The stranger steps aside to a narrow balcony and watches the city breathe. A woman passes below with a bucket. and a child holding a loaf bigger than his head. He feels the mimetic shape of the voice testing you are strong enough to protect them, if you obey me. He lets the test go by without gripping it. The alarm strikes like cold brass, not horns. The great bell above the gate gives one iron thought. The 9 are lower. The enemy has learned the rhythm of the wall and brings a new one. Siege ladders come in at offset angles. One blasted tower rebuilt with mad speed. A scattering of men from the east pushed ahead as shields. The voice thread hums from the wrapped glass. He holds the gate in idea again and feels an opposite pressure on the other side. Not raw force, but a judge's hand on a ledger. He does not push back there. He pushes around it, not arguing with the decision, but changing the accounting. He goes down to the first circle because men there need a hand to touch, not a light to admire. The alleys choke with refugees snagged between streets that no longer know their own names under fear. Orc sappers creep with small oil jars to set fire to the city from within. It is clever, cruel work. He sets his jaw and is crueler to them first. He does not make a show of it. He steps from shadow, breaks wrists, stamps throats, and moves on. The boy with the bread who saw him bleed sees him now as a man who kills like he makes lists. The boy is not afraid of that. He is safer because of it. At the gate, the rams slow. The 9 are not singing fear at random now. They pick their notes to fit the joints in the men below. One cries grief where a man lost a brother. One cries shame where a sergeant once lied. One cries dread in a corner where a woman thinks of her baby, who will never be born if this gate opens. He hears the precision and respects it the way a surgeon respects a rival who can cut closer to nerve than others. He chooses to do a thing he hates. He speaks into the minds of the front rank, not words, not even orders. He lends them memory, borrowed from himself, of standing when it was beyond reason. He gives them the feel of it, the weight on the thighs, the dry eyes that will not blink, the shape of the breath. He withdraws at once so he does not become their breath. They hold better. The line does not ripple when trolls slam. Several men begin to cry without knowing why. They think it is fear leaving. It is not. It is a private cost paid in public. He calls another sortie, not out the gate. Along the wall's top, a dozen men behind him carrying hooks, chains, and axes. They run light and silent to a place where a rebuilt tower is still setting into earth and vulnerable like a new tooth. He drops off the wall onto its roof, with a dozen yards of nothing beneath his boots. He sticks there, as if gravity confuses him with someone else. He drives his sword down through the roof skin and into the main brace. It is not an artifact, it is wood. It does what wood does when cut along its grain with malice. It shrieks and splits. The tower careens. Uruks tumble like dice. The Witch-king looks up. The air gets a degree colder. He does not meet that look longer than needed. He will spend that debt later. He leaps back onto the wall, and the men behind him clip and chop the tower's ladder away so it cannot claw its stone as it dies. It dies clean. The crash takes no houses. He filed the angles for that. He is back at the gate before most men realize he left. The line breathes better for 6 minutes. He gives it the 7th back. Mordor adjusts. The next tower comes with iron shoes and a belly full of sand to fall differently. The pressure at the gate changes. A new pattern rides it. He recognizes the architecture of the thought. A command chain that does not fear failure, because failure will be punished elsewhere. He hates it because he has known it too well. The wrapped glass on the table hums its thick note. Orthanc has joined the chorus with a counterpoint meant to cut men who think themselves wise out from the herd. He looks up. The sky is wrong. It is not that it is dark. It is that it is arranged. a spiral of cloud toward the east that is not weather. He does not bow his head, because he bows to nothing that is not man or law. He keeps his chin level and counts heartbeats, until the spiral is a stupid trick again, not a god's eye. They hold the second great push. It costs. Men die in rows you would prefer to be names later, not now. He orders the bodies moved from underfoot, and the blood sanded where it makes men slip. He orders 3 captains to sleep, and replaces them with sergeants whose eyes still look for solutions. He rips down a banner to use the pole as a lever. He gives orders until each order is small and exact enough that the world can afford to obey it. Night comes again like slow floodwater. The burned space before the gate moves with embers. The enemy steps back a pace because being near ember is like being near anger. Fires lit along the siege lines are not for warmth. They are for vision. He can see faces when the wind behaves. He tries not to learn them. He fails. It is his worst habit and his best. The council meets again with bread and a pot of something that once knew meat. Denethor eats standing with his back to the fire and resents the fire for existing because it reminds him of older warmth. Faramir dozes for 4 breaths and wakes when a runner passes in the corridor because the rhythm of boots triggers the captain's guilt. Imrahil's men strip mail and oil leather by rote while listening for words that give them jobs. First victory, Denethor says dryly. Small, complete. The city still stands. He points at the stranger with 2 fingers, not to be rude, but because a man without a name must share pronouns. And your price. You have seen it, Gandalf answers for him. He does not lift his eyes. He stares at the wrapped glass as if a snake could be studied into submission. There is cold where warm should be. There is a mark where no blade went. There is a voice in my city and a silence beyond it, and our guest fights both by being louder. That works, until it breaks the drum. You would have him softer, Denethor says, incredulous. You, who preach pity while ordering men to die in 1s and 2s. Wizard, I thought you loved paradox. I did not know you had married it. I would have him exact, Gandalf says. He looks at the stranger. You are exact. Be more so. Do not keep this city by making it a fortress for your will. Keep it by making it a tool for its own, if you can. He considers. He has kept things by force. He has regretted it. He has kept things by patience. He has regretted that too. I will keep it by respect, he says. Respect for what stone does, what men can bear, what enemies learn. If respect fails, I will use fear. If fear fails, I will use pain. If pain fails, I will bite. He looks at Denethor. Do not ask me to use love. I do not have enough left to spend here. Then do not counterfeit it, Denethor says, and for a moment they are allies in honesty. A page boy stands in the doorway, white as fresh ash. My lords, he says. He is looking at the wrapped glass, not the men. There is a voice in the stables. It speaks in the hay. It tells the horses they will live if their riders run. Gandalf is already moving. The stranger is faster because the world routs itself to get out of his way. They find the stable hands standing with bridles like guilty men with ropes. The horses roll their eyes until the whites show. The voice slithers at the edge of hearing, the cadence of command coated in kindness. You are tired, it says without words. Trust me to carry you. He does not argue. He does not declaim. He lifts both hands and claps once. The sound is nothing particular. It is not loud. It is exact. The rafters answer with their own honest note. The voice hates honest notes. It retreats with the smallest hiss of offended silk. Bind that cloth in lead if you have any, he tells the stable master. The man stares, then nods, then runs because his hands remember work while his mind does not. If lead fails, I will sit on it. He says it like he would. Gandalf breathes out. Saruman has made his device more clever, he says, voice flat. It seeks nerves, not minds. It tasted my oath, the stranger says. He will do that again. He will tune his voice forte. Then say nothing binding, Gandalf says angrily. Say only what you must to men. Keep your bargains inside you where Orthanc cannot hear. I am already bound, he says, and it is not complaint, and it is not pride. If I unbind now, we lose what we bought. I will speak with care. Power scaling, interlude. 1. Saruman's voice does not move air. It rearranges narrative. It locates vowels and phrases with a greater-than-world rhythm and offers them an easier cadence. An oath that keeps a gate becomes an oath that serves a tower, because the new cadence reduces friction. He cannot simply push harder with will. That adds more rhythm to steel. He must throw sand in the gears of story or work at angles where no cadence carries. The next assault hits along those three angles at once: steel, fear, and story. The steel meets walls and men and does what steel does when it meets both. The fear comes quieter, like a draft under a door instead of a gale through an arch. The story arrives in orders that are not orders, thoughts men think and then do, as if they had invented them. He walks the line and interrupts stories with tasks. You wedge that stone, you drink, you trade places, you sing. The songs start ragged, then catch. Men can sing over fear if the notes belong to them. He feels the Witch-king measure him again. The feel is clinical. He does not fear the king's sword. He fears the logic behind it. The king is a device. The eye is the engineer. The engineer has seen his method and is designing a question that will force him to answer wrong. They hold the second victory at dusk, small and complete, like Denethor said. The kind that does not go in songs because it looks like competence. He orders fires banked low, so sparks do not invite arrow kill. He posts men with thick fingers to the oil crates because thick fingers mean patience with stoppers. He eats something that tastes like onion and is better than onion because it is hot. The debate resumes because men who have not died must be told again why they live. Mercy, Faramir says, because he has seen Southron boys throwing down pikes and crying for mothers they will never see again. We take them. We show the Easterlings there is a road home that is not east, and when they run back with maps in their heads, Denethor asks, when the enemy uses our mercy to measure our walls, I am not against pity, I am against stupidity. We can blindfold them, Imrahil offers. We can keep them where only kindness and a wall teaches them a new name for safety. Pointless, someone mutters. The stranger lifts his hand, and the room shuts its mouth for him because it wants to hear how he counts this. Mercy is not given for their sake alone, he says. It is a weapon. It disrupts Sauron's economy. His empire is built on fear and certainty. If men learn that surrender leads to justice instead of slaughter, he must spend more to keep them. But mercy must be discriminating. Give it where it costs the enemy and saves you. Deny it where it feeds him. I will mark the line and defend it with pain. And if your line is wrong, Denethor says softly, then I will answer in person, he says. He looks at the boy who brought the bread earlier, now lurking in the doorway, because he knows rooms by smell and stories by taste. I will find those I harmed by mistake and ask for correction. I do not defer correction to councils when I can take it on my own back. Gandalf's eyes change in that moment. He has been measuring power. He has found something else and it is heavier. We can work with that, he says almost to himself. A messenger from the Pelennor runs until his chest makes a sound that should be private and then bursts into their bad wedding room. Engines, he gasps. Beyond our lower range, wheels covered in beaten plates, fire inside. They are building a road of shields. The stranger is already moving. He takes the lead with a rope coil over his shoulder. The stair spirals like an argument, and he is through it before the argument finishes. He chooses 20 men with arms like door beams and eyes that calculate. He brings ladders and hooks and a single barrel of water because misdirection is cheaper than oil. In the dark between engines, he sets lines with teamster precision, not heroics. He loops hooks under shield edges, ties slip knots, has men pull not hard but steady. The road of shields slithers like a snake with a broken back, gaps appearing in the precise carpet the enemy wants. He throws the barrel of water not at fire, but at a patch of dry dust. It turns to thick mud under the next wheel and gums an axle. The engine behind rams into it, and the two kiss in a way that will not admit rescue without embarrassment. Orcs swarm to unsnarl the mistake. Archers harvest them across angles that did not exist before. He moves constant, incorrectly patient. He never goes for the big blow if the small one will set 3 more. He saves oil. He spends rope. He buys 12 more minutes and 50 more men. When it is done, the men look at him like a door you can lean on. He nods and leaves, because doors do not accept thanks. He returns to find the wrapped glass humming. It lifts 1/10 of an inch off the table and turns to face the door, because it knows who holds most oath in the room. The voice says nothing a man with ears can hear. He hears it anyway. It tries a new tone, fatherly disappointment. You are breaking what you could organize. You are losing men you could conserve. You could be the prince this city needs. He makes his face blank. Blank is not nothing. Blank is discipline. He thinks a thought like a knife's edge. I am not your servant. The edge slides under the voice and lifts it off his oath seam. It looks almost comic, like a fish with a hook under its gill, suddenly discovering gravity. He raps it twice more. He does not smile. Orthanc pushes for a bargain, Gandalf says. Orthanc offers employment, he says, with pension and matching contributions. Matching contributions from Mordor arrive in warg form. Denethor grunts, grudgingly amused. They do a thing almost sacrilegious in that city. They sleep in shifts while the enemy watches. The stranger stands in the gatehouse and lets his eyes open and close without ever losing track of the pressure at the hinge. He catalogues pains. He respects them. He does not indulge them. He maps the cut on his cheek and the line on his palm and the cold under his eyes. He asks them what they are for. They tell him, for later. He nods. In the last hour before dawn, the 9 stoop together. The sound makes dogs in the lower city whine and babies forget to breathe. A dark rider on a lesser beast approaches under a flag you could call parley if you are very charitable. The mouth of Sauron is not yet here. This is a lesser bureaucrat, but the bureaucracy of evil is efficient. A voice like a bad flute calls for audience. Denethor insists on being there, because pride is his, and he feeds it so it feeds his courage. Gandalf stands by, because if there is a leash on a word, he wishes to hold part of it. The stranger comes because he must be where choices are made. The envoy's face is thin and religious in the wrong way. He speaks a list, terms for surrender that are not terms so much as a demonstration of literacy. The stranger listens the way you read a manual for a machine you will never use. No, he says when the list ends. You do not ask your masters? The envoy sneers at Denethor and Gandalf in turn. I have none, he says simply. I have an oath. It does not allow that word in this grammar. Consider the suffering, the envoy begins, for men who think in that tactic. That is what I am considering, he says. Leave. He looks at the horse. It is thin. Its eyes are old. He takes 3 steps forward. ignoring the hiss from the wall. He does not touch the envoy. He does not touch the beast. He looks at the horse and says, "No man between us." The envoy's mount backs, not in fear, but in relief. The envoy stumbles, curses, and goes because fear is easier when the practical details have turned against you. He watches him go. He does not lecture the wall about dignity. He knows what orcs call that kind of scene in their own tents. He is fine being mocked. Mockery that buys minutes is a good trade. Back in the wedding room, they draw circles. Rohan is somewhere moving or not. Dol Amroth holds. The city breathes. He feels the eye's attention skate and then settle for a while on something else. He does not like guessing. He likes knowing. He cannot have knowing now. He fills the space where knowing would be with work. He sends Faramir to the lower keys with 30 pikes and 10 good voices to keep order among boats. He sends Imrahil to the 5th circle where roofs are old and men will be tempted to save their houses instead of the city. He keeps Denethor out of the clockwork for an hour, and in that hour things move without running into his mind. Denethor notices. He hates it. He says nothing, because he cannot argue with efficiency without sounding like a man who loves his own frustration. At midday, Orthanc tries its cleverest trick so far. The wrapped glass goes quiet. The hum vanishes. Gandalf sighs in relief and turns to speak to a courier. The wrapped glass goes very loud in the mind of a single guard posted at the door, the one with a sister who lost a child last winter. It says, "Your pain matters. The White Tower does not see it. You could save others by opening that door." The guard's hand moves, and he does not know it moved. The stranger is across the room as if the world erased the distance with a rubber. He catches the guard's wrist, not hard. He says, "I see you." He says it like a man who has memorized a million faces and carries them still. The guard shakes once and weeps without shame. Gandalf wraps the glass in lead and curses in a language that makes the lead nervous. "Smarter foe," Denethor says, in a tone that could almost be respect if respect did not taste like ash to him. "The white traitor can hurt us without breaking a thing. He can hurt you conceptually," the stranger says. "He will hurt me conceptually. He knows I bound myself to hold. He will try to make holding and obeying the same act." He turns the lead-wrapped lump over in his palm. "I have seen this trick before." Bullies learn to smile. "What defenses?" Gandalf asks. "Witness," he says. "Write things down. Say them aloud. Make the city a choir that remembers what it is doing and why so no single voice can be louder than all their memory together." "Songs," Imrahil says, half wondering. Because he is a knight, and he understands banners and trumpets and horse lines, not the idea that song can be armor. "We will sing." "You will remember," the stranger says. "If you sing while you remember, your breath will stay steady and your hands will not shake as much." He moves the city toward that defense. He has the bell ring truth, not alarm. Time of watch changes, ovens on, water haulers rotate, names of streets shouted. He writes work like law and has it read at corners. 2 boys with pipes are told to play the same sequence every hour, so men in alleys have anchors for time. Women bake bread and call numbers. Loaves, names, blocks, places. The city's voice becomes loud enough that Orthanc's thread frays when it tries to cross it. Men hum on the wall. It is not pretty. It is not art. It is rhythm. It keeps hearts from being stolen by carefully placed dread. The first victory is named by noon and shelved because naming a thing before you put it away wastes minutes. He allows himself a breath on a balcony where winter light makes everything honest. He looks into the east and meets the eye again. This time, the look includes a very small interest. He's not sure it is for him. He is sure it bodes an experiment. He does not have to wait long. A spear of absence lances from the direction of the Morgul Vale. It is not weapon as men count weapons. It is a thought excavated to a point. It moves not at the wall, not at the gate, not at the men, at him. He does not defend with shield or pressure or light. He lets it enter. He wraps it in his oath like a spider wraps a fly and learns its weight. It burns where it touches the inner edge of his vow. The mark on his cheek turns colder. He lets the spear go through him and into the stone behind, and it leaves a line there too that will not show until rain finds it. He breathes one long, slow breath. He does not share that trick again. Knowledge is a coin. You spend it once and the enemy prints more of it. He calls a halt to sorties and hoards men like a miser. He orders repairs in corners no one will attack yet, because later they will matter, when the later enemy expects you to be exhausted. He conserves oil, spends rope, steals nails from broken carts, to knit palisades in alleys they will need. If the gate fails, he looks like he is building houses by night. The smarter foe arrives in a new voice that is not Orthanc and not Mordor. It comes with a banner not black and not white, but a grey that is not compromise, but insult. A half company of orcs from Cirith Ungol, led by a thin man with gums too pale and armour too clean. An emissary of the Tower of Sorcery, Minas Morgul's petty clerk. He does not shout. He smiles. He tells lies about prisoners and terms. He uses words with bent corners so that to answer them you must bend too. The stranger does not answer. He points at the banner's pole. That wood came from a house, he says. The clerk blinks. All wood comes from. That one came from a woman's table, he says. You can feel where her hands scrubbed bread dust into the grain. Take it out of my sight. For 1 second, the clerk is a human being, hearing sense. Then fear returns. He sneers. You will tire, he says. I will, the stranger agrees, and turns away because he owns the door to this sentence. Gandalf walks with him along the wall. He learned something from you there, the wizard says. Did he asks, without sarcasm. You named a thing he did not think could be named, Gandalf says. Sometimes mercy is naming, sometimes victory is naming. The enemy hates it when you make a thing true by attending to it. I will attend to more later, he says. First we survive the next 12 hours. You will not be able to solve the Witch-king with attention, Gandalf says quietly. His wound runs along rules. You must learn them and accept the pain of learning them. I expect to bleed when I study, he says. He looks at the east where a glow of sickly witchlight pulses like a heartbeat. He understands. The named antagonist waits. The next act will cost. They set watches. They set songs. They set a new rule. No man stands at the same murder hole for longer than 100 breaths. The enemy will place a tune in your ankle and climb it into your spine if you let stillness be a bridge. In the 3rd hour of the 2nd night, Orthanc finds a seam in the city's choir. It pushes pity like poison through a boy who cannot bear the sound of men dying without doing something. The boy grabs a lamp and runs toward the shadow under the wall, where he believes he can scare away orcs with light, as if they were wolves in a pasture. The stranger is there. He takes the lamp from hands that shake too hard to be safe. He kneels in front of the boy and sets the lamp between them on the stone. You are brave, he says. He does not make his voice kind. He makes it exact. That is good. Now be obedient. Obedience is what bravery looks like when it comes home. The boy shakes, then stills, and goes because he has been given a definition that makes his heart make sense. The man stands and his knees do not creak, because machines do not creak when they are well made. The marks on his face are darker. His breath smokes in air that is not cold enough for that. He flexes his hand and feels the line on his palm prickle as if something there would like to be fed. He goes to the gate one more time before dawn. He lays his hand on the wood. He speaks not to it, but to the men standing behind it, though he does not raise his voice. You will live, he says. Some of you will die first. That is not a contradiction. It is an order of operations. Men breathe out in laughter that does not disrespect anyone. He smiles without showing teeth. Laughter steals fear's wages. The drums begin again. A new pattern, slower. He knows a countdown when he hears one. The Witch-king moves like a problem that demands to be solved in blood or law. The eye turns towards some other board he cannot see, then flicks back. Orthan goes quiet, which is worse than noise. He draws in his cold like a cloak and tightens it around his joints. He steps to the line he drew in dust 2 days ago, which the wind has not quite erased. He puts his heel on it. The hinge of the day is under his foot again. Men line their breaths up with his without knowing they do it. Gandalf comes and does not stand shoulder to shoulder. He stands 1 pace away because doctrine requires space to keep friendship honest. Denethor stands farther back because his doctrine is different and harder. Hold what you can, the stranger says, not as a speech, as a calendar. If a thing cannot be held, name it, and let it go on your terms, not theirs. Practical philosophy, Gandalf says. We will test it. We will, he says, looking east, and be tested in return. The dark moves closer in a shape men will use for nightmares if they get years enough to wake. The Witch-king comes near, a crown of absence, a blade of rules. He hides his fear of the rule behind his hate of the king, because that is how you keep a hand steady. He lifts his sword and makes the smallest circle in the air to remind himself what circles do. Hold. He will hold until the rule finds him. When it does, he will bleed in a way that counts. The gate shivers once, not from a blow, from expectation. He lays his hand and steadies it. He speaks to the wood and to the stone and to the men and to the places in himself he never names. He says the same word to all of them in turn, the only one that can mean what he needs it to mean today. Stand. They gather over a chalk map that smells like tallow and old ink. The stranger draws 4 arrows from east to west with a knuckle. He has 4 goals, he says. First, break the gate with symbol and weight. Grond is not wood, it is story. Second, sing fear exact enough to fit mortals like shackles. Third, use despair in your house to open a door from within. Palantir and pride together are a battering ram. Fourth, test me, mark my method, and weave a countermeasures doctrine. Gandalf nods, face tight. Standard counters fail, he says for the room. Light beats fear, but costs him. Stone resists iron, but not a tail that has learned to walk. Courage holds men, yet despair in the steward undercuts a city faster than any ladder. Orthan's voice turns oaths, the stranger adds. He taps the lead-wrapped cloth. If I pour more power in, he steals more rhythm from the poor. We need angles. We will not shout louder. We will be truer. Denethor's mouth is thin. Truer at the gate would please me, he says. Sing philosophy to the hinge if it will listen. I already have, the stranger answers. And the answer is not insolence. It is inventory. A runner at the door speaks the word no one wants and everyone expects. Grond. They feel it before they hear it. A pressure like teeth set hard. The first strike lands and the oak answers in its old tongue. The second turns the bar into a question. The third comes with a flare of witchlight from the veil, as if the mountain itself blinked wrong. The gate breaks. Wood becomes splinters. Splinters become air. Smoke pushes forward like a giant's breath. He steps into the opening because someone must be first. The world feels colder by a rule, not a degree. A great beast's head shoves aside debris. A black horse pushes after, hooves careful. The crowned absence rides through. the high servant of the east, cloak emptier than sky, blade long and thin, with a hue that is not metal. Gandalf bars the road, staff up, light like winter noon on linen. Words hang between them that would set men to shaking. The stranger moves to stand at the wizard's left, one pace back, as if flanking a door that should never be opened. He sees the calculus in the void where a face would be, curiosity sharpened to a nail. "You have no place in this music," the Witch-king says, and the sentence scrapes like ice on glass. "You are a spillage." "So are you," the stranger answers, and lifts his sword. The auramite edge takes the wrong light and teaches it to behave. The crown raises its thin blade. The first touch is not iron, it is jurisdiction. The air writes a line across reality and requires signatures. He blocks before the blade moves, pressure blooming between them, a disc that bends shriek and stills ash. The impact happens in a time slightly sideways. Men feel it as a pressure behind the teeth. Stone chips fall in tidy arcs. The Witch-king's mount squeals and stamps backward. The horse's eyes go all white and then calm, as if ordered to live. He shifts right, then left, angle, never force, drawing the big nothing into a narrow corridor of options. It follows because it is precise. Precision can be shepherded. The void blade dips, catches his sword on a thought's edge, and skates along to his vambrace. The screech of that contact is not sound. It uses memories instead, searching for one that will open him. It finds his oath, the breach seal, and bites. Cold enters like law. It bypasses skin, blood, plate. It bites the seam where he bound his transit to purpose. The line on his cheek sparks a filament of blue-black. The crescents under his eyes deepen and climb, webbing toward his temples. He steps back because stepping back is not defeat. It is respect for information. The Witch-king presses, blade drawing letters in the air with arrogance steady as carpentry. He counters with geometry and timing, shaving fractions from momentum, refusing to meet the rule where the rule is strongest. Twice, he is almost too slow. Twice the crown's weapon passes through his shadow and rings as if it struck a bell hung under his sternum. The second time, something smells like winter in a crypt. Gandalf pivots to keep space clear of men. His staff hammers stone. Each strike pins one of the Nazgul's lesser notes for a heartbeat. He does not speak the name of any doom. He's making a table stable while someone else fights on it. They find a cadence, cut, press, refuse, bind, step, deny. The crown void shifts tactics without pause. It thrusts, not at the body, but at the vow. The blade's point is a thought. Surrender governance and live. The point meets the breath of a man who will not accept salvation that costs freedom and slides off. It still leaves a bead of frost on his lip. "You seek order," the Witch-king says, and the words are crafted with a lawyer's joy. "We offer perfection. Yield the loudness of your will to the quiet we keep. Your men will never break again." His sword hovers, doubts thickness from a parry. This is the right temptation. He wants a world that stops screaming. He could be a tool and save 10,000 here, 1,000,000 later. He has saved billions by being worse than this proposition. He knows it. "No," he says, and the breath that carries it costs him heat so dear his knuckles ache. Order from fear is not order. It is captivity renamed. The void blade turns sliver thin and slides past his guard with a perfect small cruelty. It pricks the webbing at his temple and leaves behind something almost invisible, a black moat with its own horizon. The moat sinks into the unseen in him and makes residence there. His left eye waters with cold and sees a second image of the world half a heartbeat behind the first. He countercuts. Steel meets law and sparks a clean sound that men will remember when they talk to their sons. He drives the crown back a step without thinking of victory. He thinks of space, of buying it. Each step he wins is a breath for lives he counted when he walked the battlements. The fell beast lunges with a mouth like a broken window. He does not waste a stroke on it. He squeezes the air by its jaw hinges, and the mouth closes with a bad click. The creature shudders and remembers being a thing that once loved darkness without duty. He uses the flinch to shoulder the Witch-king off the main axis, away from the avenue that leads to the higher circles. The fight turns 30 degrees west. That angle saves a row of houses and 300 people who sleep with knives under their pillows because knives feel like agency. The Nazgul's fear speech sharpens. It no longer throws blankets over men. It threads needles through individual guilt. A soldier with a limp remembers a boy he couldn't carry. Another tastes water he stole from a sister. Knees loosen. He does not dare push light now. The cold in him would lunge for it. He speaks a single word across the ranks, pitched to strike bone. Witness. Men say what they see out loud. Saying changes the shape of fear's hook. It cannot hide inside silence and feed. The crown feints to his left and attacks through shadow under his right arm. For a human, the strike would appear from nowhere. He has seen too many angles to be human here. He rolls his shoulder, lets the blade kiss his pauldron, and catches the returning line on his sword's flat. The kiss leaves a frost flower that does not melt. Man, the Witch-king says, as if pronouncing a diagnosis and a death sentence in one. Yes, he answers, and thinks of exceptions written into songs before songs were taught to men. He will not steal a doom promised to another. It would be efficient. It would be wrong. They bind again. The rule blade curls and hooks toward his heart, but not for killing, for binding. He feels the circumference of the trap. Accept a chain in exchange for a scepter. He rejects with a patience that is almost cruelty to himself. His oath tightens and screams along the seam. The mark on his palm flares ink black, and for one instant his sword's edge dulls with hoarfrost, then brightens again because he will not let the enemy write on his tools. A bell sounds from somewhere high, a thin, old tone like porcelain struck with a ring. Men startle. The Witch-king's head turns a fraction toward the citadel, as if to check whether some other schedule has come due. In the east, very far off, a horn answers, long, low, braided with 1,000 hooves still an hour away. It is not salvation, it is timing. Dawn's first true pallor leaks under the cloud as if the sun has cut a small hole just to watch. The crown leans forward, whisper loud. You will freeze, it says without malice. The cold will eat your oath from the edges inward. When you can no longer hold a gate, you will use your true voice and break the city by accident. He could end this now by being monstrous. He could call a weight of pressure the stone cannot bear and fold the void blade's rule into a cage. He sees the line of it. He sees the cost in screaming masonry and men's hearts. He lowers his sword a fraction and gives the exact refusal a craftsman gives to a buyer who offers gold for a tool meant for a child. No. A cock crows in some stubborn yard 3 circles down. The sound is absurd and perfect. The horn calls again from the north. The Witch-king's horse stamps once, obedient and resentful. The crowned absence leans closer, so that frost inks a second, finer line above the first on the stranger's cheek. A double scar no blood can find. Not yet, it says, to him or to itself, and draws back through the ruin of the gate, cloak folding wrong around where a body is not. He does not chase. He remembers a sentence sung into the world long ago and stays his hand because someone else will need a victory that belongs to them to keep the world's grammar unbroken. He stands a moment in the smashed portal and breathes through the pain that has nothing to do with breath. Codex note. Morgul rule wounds anchor in the unseen, and propagate along vows. Physical repair and null pressure delay spread, but cannot excise the embedded command without sanctified counter-authority. Men pour into the breach with ropes and timbers because they understand work. Gandalf grips his forearm once, hard enough to bruise. "You chose right," he says, and it is both praise and warning. "It burned anyway," the stranger says. He touches his temple. Under the skin, cold sleeps like a coin in a purse. He stitched lore into my breach. "Then we will find better hands to unpick it," Gandalf says. He looks up toward the citadel. "But not in this room, not in this hour." Denethor arrives with a cloak thrown on, and grief so brazen it reads like arrogance. He looks at the ruin, and then at the man who did not die, making it less. "You did not stop him," he says. "I did not end him," the stranger corrects. "I moved him. Sometimes that is the job. Sometimes the job is to die ending a thing," Denethor says. He's looking at the stranger and seeing another son, and it makes him cruel without thinking he's cruel. "Then choose correctly which man dies," the stranger says, "and does not waste heat on anger he cannot afford. We will hold until your riders arrive." "Riders," Denethor says without belief, then flinches because a far horn contradicts him. The men shore the opening with beams and prayer. He walks among them, steadying hands, rationing presence. The cold in him licks curiously at each person he passes, as if the embedded moat is testing for the shortest path through kindness. He tightens his will around it like a bandage. It purrs with annoyance and waits. Gandalf takes him up to a narrow chamber where wind gathers a second before it remembers to move. A basin sits there with leaves floating in water that smells like green memory. "Kingsfoil," the wizard says. "It calls men back from the edges of despair. It will not heal you, but it will help those near you, where your wound might spill." He leans over the steam and breathes. The scent does not sweeten him. It sets a boundary. The cold recedes a hand's breadth, nothing more. He can feel its shape now, a needle buried in an oath knot, humming to itself. He names it softly. It does not hate the naming. That worries him more than if it had. A healer brushes past, cheeks pink with anger at death. "You stink of frost," she tells him frankly. "Do not bring that into my hall." "I am trying not to," he says. He steps back from the threshold. Patients in cots twitch if he stands too near. Farther away, their breathing steadies. The lesson is immediate and surgical. He must command from edges, not in crowds. He adds it to the new list of his limits. Gandalf sets a cloth on the basin and wrings it out like a man rings a bell. "There is a counsel I do not want to give," he says without preamble, "and you will not want to take. Give it anyway," the stranger says. "You must go up to the Hallow beneath Mindoluin," Gandalf says. "Before the next noon if we live that long. Your presence at the wall buys minutes. Your wound at the wall will cost us hours later. The powers that watch this land will not let what you carry grow unchecked if you place yourself where judgment stands. You want me to leave the gate," he says flatly. "You want me to abandon the hinge. I want you to keep the hinge from rusting to you." Gandalf answers, "If you stay, you may hold until you cannot, and when you cannot, you will fall like a temple. The Hallow will speak to you if you let it, or it will silence you, if that is the better mercy. Either way, the city will live past the hour." He looks out across the Pelennor. Fires write grammar on the fields. In the north, movement like wind in wheat that is not wheat. Rohirrim. The ice pressure angles towards that and then back. Orthung's voice sulks in his lead prison and plots a neighbour's way in. The cold purrs under his skin like a tame thing trying to learn to hunt. "Who goes with me?" he asks. "Few," Gandalf says. "Men who will not speak. One who can sing and not be stolen by it. A captain, a healer, Shadowfax, and me. Denethor will forbid it, he says. Denethor will try, Gandalf says, and his staff makes a small, unhappy click on stone. The steward forbids it. He forbids it with eloquence and with exhausted rage. He names 100 names for desertion and gift wraps them in state. He calls the stranger coward, spy, math error. The stranger takes it because men are allowed to shout where their sons bleed. He waits until the words spend themselves and then says, I will return before the next night falls, or I will not return. Either is better than breaking your city under the weight of me. Take my contempt with you, Denethor says. I will carry only what I can use, the stranger says, and leaves with a faint nod that could be respect or simply habit. Faramir meets them at the 6th circle, with blood stiff on his sleeve and steady eyes. You leave me the gate, he says without question. I leave you the gate, the stranger confirms. You have the rhythm. You know when to give and when to cut. Listen to the stones. They will tell you when they are ready to break and when they can wait an hour longer. I will listen, Faramir says. He glances at Gandalf. Bring him back. The men have learned his weight. If he is not here, his absence will weigh more. I will bring him back if he can be brought, Gandalf says, which is the only promise he allows himself. They ride. Shadowfax carries 2. The rest are on foot, cloaks grey, faces closed, not to hide from eyes but from their own. They pass through alleys where women sing to keep children from hearing drums, and through a court where a dead man's friends argue, not about grief, but about bread, because grief can wait, but ovens cannot. At the last gate, the guard captain looks at their faces and not their writ and simply opens. Outside the broken main gate, they move along the inner wall's footings, using shadow and fallen stone as a road. The cold in him lies quiet, as if curious about the mountain. The sky to the north thrums with the approach of riders. Horns sigh like whales in a far sea. The eye twists, as if adjusting a focus. He refuses to let his neck stiffen. He will not nod at an enemy at this range. Halfway up the mountain road, the air changes. It does not become cleaner. It becomes exact. The wind knows where the cliff is by inches. The ground intends to be ground. No story rides its skin. He feels the embedded moat turn its head, if such a thing can, and listen. Here, Gandalf says, and they go on foot the rest of the way, leaving hoofprints to puzzle a later captain into unnecessary worry. A narrow stair cut in the living rock leads to a shelf where a tree would like to live but cannot. Higher still, the hallow waits, a bowl of stone that remembers the feet of kings and exiles. The world's music is loud here, not volume, but fidelity. He steps into it like a man stepping into a river he knows might carry him away. He does not kneel. He has knelt to men and laws. He will not kneel to a place. He takes off his helm. The cold in him noses at the air and frowns without face. The scar on his cheek thickens, ink black under white. He breathes in, and the air breathes him back. Speak, Gandalf says, but not to me. He is not a poet. He invents no prayer. He says the truth as he knows it. I brought a breach with me and tied it to this work. I gave my oath as leash and anchor. Something from your enemy slipped a thorn into the knot and hums to itself. If I stay where men breathe crowded, the humming spreads as a habit. If I leave, they lose minutes. If I break rules to cut the thorn, I ask this world to twist around me, and I will not ask that of it. He looks toward the west, not above. I submit to judgment. Nothing answers first. Then the wind stops, not slows, stops. Birds crouch and quiet. The city's noise muddies, then clears. A sound remains that is not sound. He recognizes the shape of it, authority without appetite, law without glee. If a mountain could lay a hand on a child's head without bending, it would feel like this. He stands in it. It runs along him like water along a blade, finding nicks, marking where it might catch. It finds the oath knot and the thorn. It names both in a tongue that is not language. The thorn hisses, very small. The law presses once, exactly, and the mote sinks deeper, beyond his hand, beyond his breath, into the grammar of what he is. He does not move. He's being cut by someone with better tools than his. Shadowfax stamps and breathes white. The healer at his back makes an involuntary sound, more angry than afraid. The captain watches his hands and waits for orders that might never be spoken. Gandalf leans on his staff and looks older than the mountain and younger than the wind. He sees a choice shaped like 3 roads. 1. Return to the wall and keep buying minutes until the cold reaches a point where he speaks and breaks what he means to hold. The music will resist. Men will die badly and for too long. He will save enough to call it victory and hate the word. 2. Leave this city a free agent and impose order in strokes. Cut wars before they ripen, become legend and then law by proximity. He will save more lives faster. He will build a world where men stand straight and stare into a horizon they did not choose. He has built those before. They end in statues and secret police. 3. Accept sanction. Accept limits. Accept a mandate written by hands he does not own. Become servant with teeth. Keep oath tied to a pole that refuses to move even for his pain. He will be slower, smaller, exactly placed. He will sleep less and be watched. He will accomplish more than his pride will ever forgive. He does not decide now. He catalogues what is owed. He whispers the names of men who looked at him today and discovered that obedience can be dignity when the one who commands respects the cost. The wind shivers like a dog shaking off river water. A leaf falls into the bowl of the hallow. It is green. The dead tree in the citadel will not bear fruit today, but somewhere a future remembers. A noise like a cry from dirty throats rises behind them on the path they climbed. Uruks in mountain grey, clever and light. Not the battering rams of Mordor. Isengard's make. In front of them, on a ridge, a figure in white with a many-coloured sheen steps out from among rocks that he thinks have hidden him. Saruman the Once White stands where law cannot reach easily and smiles as if he invented smiles. "Shall we discuss governance?" he asks, and his voice moves toward them with a lover's assurance. The captain behind the stranger shifts his stance, weight on the ball of his foot, eyes bright. The healer puts her hand on the rope that holds a bell never rung and does not ring it. Gandalf's mouth tightens, then softens, then tightens. The stranger tips his head the smallest degree and learns how the cold tries to sing through him when the voice is near. "Later," he says very quietly to the wizard. Then louder for the new foe who is an old mistake in a new coat. "We will be judged first." Saruman laughs once. It is a perfect, empty sound. "I have already judged," he says. "Not you," the stranger says, and the mountain seems to lean forward to listen to what comes next. Saruman does not draw a blade. He draws breath, and his voice climbs the air like ivy seizing a wall. It reaches for the seam of the oath and tugs, gentle as a physician testing an old scar. The cold in him stirs, pleased to be seen, and leans toward the tug as if water to gravity. The stranger fixes his eyes on the white stone bowl and refuses to tilt. "You bind yourself to a failing world," Saruman says, and the syllables arrive already half accepted. "Let me retune you. Your order, my administration. Music without waste. Cost without consent," he answers, and speaks to the stone underfoot instead of the man. Mindoluin, witness. The mountain is not a person who answers. It is a law that stands. The air hushes. The voice meets friction. Words slow as if pushed through honey. Uruks move, grey in grey. Their steps exact and light. The captain at his back flips his spear. It becomes a walking stick, because that is how a certain kind of killer tells himself not to fear. The healer slides her hand from the bell rope. She chooses to trust that silence can be as loud as warning. Gandalf plants his staff in a crack and waits with a patience that is fury domesticated by wisdom. Saruman turns, cloak shining like a peacock kept in a cage long enough to forget it is a bird. He lifts a hand. "You will come with me now," he says. Not command, not suggestion. A blend calibrated for oath-bearing men. The cold leans again, harder. He does not argue with compulsion in the voice. He denies it a place to land. "I am already somewhere," he says quietly, "and I am being watched." He means the Hallow. The Hallow hears being meant and tightens itself around the space they occupy. Uruks surge. The captain takes two at the knees, turns the third with a shoulder, and finishes with a backhand meant to be forgotten by everyone later. The healer stays behind the staff line and does not apologize for it. Her work is tomorrow. Gandalf flicks his wrist once. A stone answers not with light, but with a small exact pop of pressure that unthreads an Uruk's balance and sends him into a wall he had planned to lean on. Saruman sees it. The place where the stranger's cold tries to make an ally of him. He smiles, pitying, and pours tonal mercy at the seam. "Let me carry the weight," he says. "Be what you dream to be without consequence. I will make the numbers add." The stranger laughs once, which surprises even him. It is not scorn. It is anger with teeth sheathed, the kind a father spends on a child who wants to play with knives. "You will make the numbers vanish," he says, and steps forward, not at Saruman, but between Saruman and the Hallow. "You are not judged," he adds, and that is the point that matters here. The wind stops, not slows, stops. Ascent comes with the stillness that none of the men can name, because they have not stood where a western sea lifts light into salt. It is not sweet, it is true. A leaf tumbles into the stone bowl, green where no green should be, veins silvered like starlight stored. No one's hand threw it, no tree above shook it down. It simply is. Saruman's colours shudder, as if remembering white and hating the memory. He lifts his chin and smooths his robe with the fingers that want to be claws. "Very well," he says. "The city will fall while you pray. I prefer results." He bows to the air as if to an equal he cannot quite see, and withdraws with a grace that would be beauty if it were not so exact a cruelty. His Uruks peel away down goat paths, sure-footed as theft. Gandalf exhales through his nose, the sound old and amused and in pain. "You see," he says to the stranger without looking at him, "why we needed to be here, not there." "I would rather have been there for the next 12 hours, he answers. "But I see." He rubs his temple where cold nests in a knot and feels it protest the leaf's presence like an animal under a blanket. The protest makes him almost fond of it. He puts that thought aside with force. "Reach the throne," the Hallow says without voice. The words do not land in his ears. They are carved onto the gumline of his will, where oaths live and teeth meet bread. He nods to the law, which is not deference. It is cooperation. They descend by a different path, not secrecy, respect. The healer presses a cloth steeped in kingsfoil into his palm and snatches her hand away at the bite of cold that radiates from his skin. "Stand on the edges of my wards," she orders without rank, because rank means less to a woman who keeps men from dying by telling them when to drink and when to sleep. "If you come near the shallow breathing, their breaths will learn yours, and yours is wrong right now." "Noted," he says. He takes the cloth and breathes green like someone who has grown up around oil and iron, learning the scent of a garden. It does not sweeten him. It tunes him. The cold becomes a tone he can name instead of a fog he endures. They pass the houses of healing, cots in rows, steam, the quiet chaos of women and men inventing order at knife point. He stands at a threshold and watches hands perform miracles that do not announce themselves. A boy sits up, swears he is fine, throws up, lies back down, and sleeps. A man weeps because his toes have returned, and pain is a kind of citizenship. He wants to go inside and steady pulses with a thought. He does not. Cost is everywhere. He will not pay a coin that breeds debt. Gandalf walks beside him through an arcade of white stone, where the world's noise thins and meaning grows heavier. You asked for judgment, the wizard says. You will receive mandate. I asked to be cut where I could not cut myself, he answers. If mandate is part to the blade, I will take the scar. He pauses, then adds, I do not like, and stops. Being told, Gandalf finishes, and smiles without malice. I have not liked it for many years. I have learned to make friends with the hand that corrects me. It keeps me from worshipping my own work. They enter the citadel. Pageantry rushes to meet them because pageantry is how a city tells itself what it is. The court of the fountain stands like a held breath. The withered tree lifts dead branches and somehow casts shade. Tower guards in black and silver stand each man an axis, helms catching light like disciplined stars. A narrow ring of wardens in white hoods hung the Hallows precinct. Their faces are not hidden, but their eyes are turned inward. They are blanks, not in power, but in practice. Women and men who have bound themselves to be unmoved by glamour, trained to let songs pass through without catching. Their presence changes the air around the tree, thin as a knife, kind as bread. He stops where the paving changes and knows without being told that no man, who cannot bear the world's weight, should walk past. He removes his helm. It is not an act of homage so much as an admission that he wishes to feel more exactness than metal allows. The cold in him refuses to step forward. It does not like this light. The fountain's fall becomes a line. Water forgets how to splash and remembers how to speak. The tree's dead needles tremble as if remembering green. The mountain's stillness focuses like a lens, and with it, a pressure that is not weight so much as alignment. He does not kneel. He stands as a man stands who has watched thrones ruin countries. He lowers his chin a fraction, because courtesy makes law easier to fit. The wardens hum a line too quiet to be a tune. It is an accounting. He opens his mouth to say, again, what he has done and why. The mandate speaks first, everywhere and nowhere, in words they do not have, and meanings he knows anyway. You will not be king here. I do not ask to be, he says out loud, because that admission should be public. You will not be God here. I am not a god, he says, and some of the guards blink as if a cold thought melted. You will be Warden-Guest. You will hold in the gap and never seal yourself into the wall. He breathes once. The breath becomes a small cloud before his mouth and then is drawn straight down into the paving, taken as signature. You will touch the music only at its edges, never in its heart. You will not rekey its meter. You will not make it sing your name. When you must press on matter, you will press as shield, not as bit. He listens. He measures himself against that. It is not insult. It is care dressed as restriction. He has given orders like these to men he wished to keep from burning the world by saving it too quickly. You will not slay what doom has elsewhere assigned. You will not own victories that belong to others. You will refuse efficiency when it breeds destitution. You will accept slowness where swiftness breaks inheritance. He thinks of the Witch-king, of a prophecy he could learn by asking and refuses to ask. He thinks of armies he could destroy with a thought, and what would grow in the soil of such miracles. He thinks of the baker's boy laughing at scars like bread scores. He swallows the reflex to offer to do more. He keeps the offer as heat he will spend where it belongs. The cold in him stiffens like a beast in a doorway and tries to flee backward into him. The hallow does not burn it. The hallow names it and pins it to a place where it cannot grow without raising its hand. It is not cured. It is leashed. He recognizes the art. He has leashed monsters like this and hated himself for needing to. He loves whoever leashed this in him a little, which is how you forgive good law. The fountain spills again, water remembering how to be sloppy. The wardens unfocus their eyes. Gandalf lets out a breath and wipes one knuckle under his eye as if dust had landed there and politics forbids him to say it was something else. A single new leaf appears on the dead tree and does not green. It silvers, the colour of a future drawn too thin to wear and still offered. Do you accept? Gandalf asks. It is not theatre. It is the mechanism by which men are made into offices without lies. I accept, he says. He does not swear by any sky he brought with him. He swears by the stones he will walk until they do not need him. Something in the city loosens without breaking. A far bell answers. The lead-wrapped disc in the wedding room hums, then sulks. The cold in his temple draws back 2 finger widths, as if correcting its posture in a court. He turns to the guards and lifts his hand, not in salute, not in command, in acknowledgement. I am guest, he says so they all hear it. You keep your house. I bar your doors when you must sleep. The captain of the tower guard inclines his head a hair. It is acceptance from a man who knows. Acceptance is more expensive than defiance and buys more. They descend from the fountain court to a chapel where wounded captains breathe and proud men pretend to nap because nurses have told them to. He stays at the threshold. The healer from the mountain walks the aisles and does not glance back to see if he obeys. She knows he knows. He watches her pack a wound in a way that will scar pretty and save a tendon. He files the technique, not to use it, to be impressed by the world. Gandalf leans against a pillar and lets his staff balance with no hand. It knows how to stand now, because the city has taught it. Dogma, he says, not an accusation, an invitation. Cost, he answers, the same tone. Men must know where they cannot go, if they are not to wander into cliffs. I will speak operating limits aloud, so men can hold me to them. And when limits cost lives you could have saved, Gandalf asks. I will weep later, he says, but I will not step past them. I have shaped too many futures around exceptions. You would have made a good clerk of Mandos, Gandalf says, almost kind, which is the best compliment he knows how to give in this mood. Clerks must sleep, he answers. They breathe together for a minute, and it sounds like war and friendship. He takes up his sword again, and feels the blade a fraction warmer, as if the metal approves of quartz. He tries the edge with his thumb out of habit. The line on his palm stings in warning, and he withdraws. The cold has rules now. He will treat it as a colleague with sharp elbows. He and Gandalf and the small escort climb to the hall, where the throne sits empty. It is not a chair that makes kings. It is a chair kings must be made for. The black seat waits with the patience of continence. He stops well short, because he will not stand for a painting of a future he has no right to colour. Light falls from high windows, and finds dust that has not been moved since a spring no one speaks about. A tapestry stirs with no breeze. He stands in that room and allows himself to think of his own throne far away, its machine, its hunger, its breaking. He refuses to let loneliness vote in this poll. There is a presence here that is not the Hallows law. It is domestic instead of planetary. The memory of rulers who remembered that the law they carry is supposed to free men for work, not bind them for ease. It speaks not in sentences but in expectations. Do not be obvious. Do not be cruel. Do not be neat. Be right. Reach the throne, the law whispered on the mountain said. Here the throne answers without voice. Do not sit. Bring a man to sit. He nods once, as if accepting a correction he pretended to know already. He files the job under future. It does not belong to him. He will still help. He returns to the court. The wardens step aside in a way that is not deference and not fear. It is the space given to a guest who has earned a key to a drawer. He takes nothing from the drawer. He leaves a promise on the counter that he will not open what is not his. Power scaling. Interlude. 2. Under sanction, his pressure cannot reset the local music. He may brace, never recompose. He cannot dominate wills or carry men's fear by possession. He may lend posture and memory, but must withdraw. He cannot kill doom-anchored entities that belong to another's prophecy. He can redirect, delay, or mark them. He can bless oaths into exactness and make matter remember honest service, but only where men accept the cost with eyes open. He may ask the Hallow for 3 signs in all his time here. Each sign will drain the cold or deepen it. He looks at Gandalf. 3 signs, he says, because saying limits allowed presses them into the ledger. Save one, Gandalf advises. Men like us squander miracles by being clever with them. Agreed, he says, and is surprised to find the word pleasant. A runner reaches them, breath tight, eyes sharp. South, he manages. We saw flags, green with the white horse, over the northern ridge. They ride hard. The man does not say Rohan will come in time. Men who count know the difference between in time and in time for making songs. The stranger tastes the rhythm of horns moving in the grass and calculates fury against distance. Back to the hinge, he says. I will stand in the breach and not spread. The last clause looks like humility and is in fact engineering. They move down through corridors cool as cellars. The city sounds change with each circle. Cooking, crying, metal, prayer. He catalogues the pattern not to boast about his awareness later, but to know where silence is wrong. At the first circle, silence is wrong. It feels like Orthan's palm pressed to a bell. He stops in the shadow of a buttress and listens with his wound. The cold hears where the voice threads and points. There, he says, and 2 wardens go with ropes and a cloth of lead and return with a small stolen device wired into a priest's eave. He does not rage. He adds a man to the watch who grew up with thieves. At the ruined gate, men have made an art piece of beams and hope. He stands 1 pace inside and breathes the pressure outward until air thickens just enough that arrows dip early and fear trips going upstairs. He does not spill. He feels the Hallow's leash tug gently when he leans, a reminder that shield is not scepter. He likes the leash. He would have hated it yesterday. Faramir holds the right, Imrahil the left. Denethor a balcony where he can be seen not to flee. The enemy masses like an argument rehearsed too many times. Gron's carcass smokes, its story not quite over. The 9-wheel, not casual, not hurried. An algebra of hunger over men. Orthan goes quiet, which is the voice's cleverest song. Minas Morgul's clerk measures ladders with a ruler in his head. He does not make a speech. He adjusts a brace. He moves a boy. He nods at a woman with a bandage basket and she nods back as if to a co-worker. He looks east and allows his face to reflect nothing but arithmetic. Men glance and think, we can stand another hour because hours obey men who do not perform. Gandalf takes the parapet and shouts not poetry but procedure. Breathe at the top, he calls, not the bottom. Lift shields on the downbeat. Release on my hand. He does not use light. He uses voice like a metronome. Men live. The first crash of the second day lands. The city does not flinch. The line bends as much as a knee does before it stops. He holds the pressure in a bowl shape, so force slides off to either side and exhausts itself biting air. Trolls hit that curve and look angry, which helps no one, and delights a tiny, cruel part of him that he does not feed. The Witch King does not re-enter, not here, not now. It passes overhead like a moon gone to wrong school, attention pinned to a field of grass where a horn grows louder. The embedded cold in him turns its head and listens east-west like a dog watching two doors. He smiles with no mouth because he likes information that loses its temper. Denethor watches him stand, and in that narrow angle decides whether to despise or employ. He's too tired to choose. He does both. "Stranger," he says, "your leash shows. It keeps me from biting my hand," he says. "You may prefer it." "I prefer results," Denethor says. And in this moment, they are almost mirror-kind. He runs the wall like a careful fire. Where men flare, he smothers. Where men dim, he cups his hand. He spares nothing for flourish. A ladder goes up fast as a swear. He lets it and uses it to drop 2 bundles of stones into a knot of orcs where a ram would have been. He cuts an arm around a sergeant's shoulders and holds a man on his feet, while the man's own legs remember their job. He puts the sergeant back down and says, "Now," and the sergeant goes as if a machine that was recocked. Ortung's counter arrives in a place he did not think to guard. A scribe's door, a monk's mouth, a piece of chalk run across slate. It writes a numerate lie, that orders conflict, that watches overlap, that the gate is open when it is not. He feels men's minds skid. He has no spare light for that. He shouts, "Witness!" again, and the men call out what they see. Gate shut, brace solid, oil capped. The lie cannot find quiet to breed. It dies like a moth on a good night. A runner from the 6th circle, red hair, missing 2 teeth, skids into him without seeing who he hits and starts to apologize until he recognizes metal that remembers suns. "They're lighting back ovens early," the boy blurts, "for bread when the thing before morning happens." He means riders. He means whatever it is that wars hope for to justify being so loud. "Good," he says. "Bread does what horns cannot." He means it. The boy runs lighter. The assault tightens and loosens like a fist working a stuck ring. They do not break. They do not triumph. They keep hours. The sky lightens in a strip, as if it meant to blush and instead chose discipline. A horn from the north says what words cannot without becoming lies. Men stand straighter. Enemy captains improvise badly around a fact they cannot file. He looks at Gandalf. They do not nod, because nodding would spend something they may need later. They look away, and to work. The Witch King slants above, frustration elegant as mathematics. It looks down once at the man who would have been monstrous if he had said yes, then away at a king who is not yet in the frame. The cold in him shivers like a dog at rain and settles. He leans a fraction more into the shield he is allowed to be, and feels the leash say, "Enough." He obeys. "Stand," he says, and the word caches the last fatigue in the men around him for later, and they borrow against it as you borrow against a fair harvest. A rider with the sun caught in his hair goes by in a blur, smaller than stories, larger than hunger. A banner moves like a sentence, finally finished. Hooves along the northern rim write law in the grass. A roar from the fields arrives up the wall with the shape of a miracle that is too practical to be one. He remains where he must remain. Guest, warden, shield. He breathes his breath out and lets the city breathe it back as if they had practiced. The cold in him hears the horn and calms, not because it is less, but because something in the pattern has become right enough that even a sickness knows to wait. He files that as medicine and as propaganda, because both matter. He thinks, not with longing, of the throne and of the man who will sit there, and of the work that will make that sitting possible. He thinks of the 3 signs and decides he will not ask for one now. Men must have this victory without his miracle in it. They will forgive him for giving them less because it is more. He looks to the west, where judgment lives, and then to the east, where appetite is making plans. He squares his shoulders. He is happy, a small private thing that does not change his face. He has been given rules. He is better with rules. He will now keep this city by keeping himself. He will now help it win by not stealing its wins. He lifts his sword a little and rests the flat on his shoulder, because this is work, and his back will remember if he forgets to be kind to it. He says, not loud, not soft, now, and the day turns. The charge breaks like weather. Horns from the north unspool the tight thread of night, and green banners roll down the ridge like fields remembering wind. Hooves bite the polena in their thousands. Spears arrow together. A man with sunlight in his hair shouts, and the line changes shape from dread to decision. The city breathes, and the breath has weight again. He does not leave the breach. Guest, warden. He cups pressure over the raw moor where the gate once stood, keeps arrows slow, keeps ladders slippery, keeps a dozen men from breaking at once and spreading that fault through the wall like rot. He watches the Witch-king tilt, an elegant instrument retuned to a new question, and pass overhead toward a doom it thinks belongs to it. The cold in his temple leans like a hound that smells a story. He holds the leash and does not follow. Faramir keeps the right with a stubborn grace that looks like poverty's best habit. Imrahil nails the left into the stone with courtesy turned into iron. Denethor stands and is seen. There is value in that even when the man inside is in pieces. Gandalf is a metronome on the parapet. Breath and release. Downbeat and lift. Southrons break around the Rohirrim's first hammering pass. Some stagger, some throw down long pikes and clutch at the fact that their hands still exist. He marks those and orders rope and water for them, not out of goodness, but because good bookkeeping ruins Sauron's wages. Black-armored Uruks try discipline. Discipline runs out when their captain's fingers lose count under arrows. Trolls feel tired for the first time in a long time and do not like it. Orthunk's thread tries to tune courage into obedience. It hums through a priest's eaves again, tries a man dividing bread in the 5th circle, suggests he double count and overboil. He interrupts with work. You carry stones, you sing, you drink. The lyre flutters, discovers it cannot breed in the sound of labour, and dies unheard. He does not look toward the field, where a king rides toward a rule blade with a laughter that is duty sharpened. He does not look at the road where a girl hides herself in a man's name to throw a different law at a different ledger. He keeps the wall honest so that what should happen can happen without him. The Witch-king's shadow slides across his face and leaves a taste like iron water. The cold inside stirs, suspicious and hungry. He tells it without words that patience is also a blade. It purrs and waits. He files that for later. Sickness that can be negotiated with must never be befriended. The day is a saw. Teeth forward, teeth back. South of the Ramas, the fire's thin. Far boats on the river pause, then turn. Corsairs find their math corrected by flags that are not supposed to be on those prows. The eye adjusts. The whole east darkens like a thought hardening. In the lower city, a stable boy tries to free horses for mercy. He catches the boy's wrist and makes the mercy into obedience with a sentence that fits a child's bone. Save what you can by staying where you must. The boy nods so hard he almost falls over. He will not forget being seen. When the Rohirrim hit the eastern flank, when the scream from the vale changes into a single, thin, stubborn no, When the mounted hammer breaks and reforms and breaks again, he feels the hallow's leash tighten and then relax. A teacher's hand on a clever pupil's shoulder. Enough and enough. Do no more, now do. He lowers the shield of air and instead sets a dozen tiny tasks that save 20 lives. A brace is adjusted half a thumb. A wedge is flipped. A knot of rope is taught to slide instead of jam. A nurse is moved 3 paces. So a man sees her and remembers not to die. This is how God should work if they must. Small, exact, unpraised. Twice he almost spends a sign. Once when the breach is a mouth, not a hole. Once when fear takes 4 men at once like a net. Both times he says no to himself and spends rope and breath instead. He keeps 2 miracles for a day, when miracles will not steal a man's song. By late afternoon, the field screams itself down into breath. The king in sunlight rides where he must and falls as tales require. A shadow meets its claws and cannot argue. The air above the city changes temperature by the width of a thought. The Witch-king's attention passes him a last time, clinical, disappointed, and withdraws from the story like a knife cleaned and put away where children cannot find it. He stands still at the gate and yields nothing for the absence to belittle. Men bring water in lines that look like prayer. Women strip mail from forearms swollen into ugly, living anvils. Someone laughs at nothing and keeps laughing until the laugh becomes a cry and then a sleep. He posts 2 wardens at the houses of healing and forbids himself the threshold. The cold in him has learned to quiet when it smells kingsfoil. It will not yet leave the seam where law pinned it. In the wedding room, the lad-wrapped disc vibrates so gently that a man might think it a fly. He opens the lid, takes the glass, and presses it to the stone in front of Denethor, where all can see. "Your rival," he says to Gandalf, meaning Orthung, then to Denethor, because the man still bears the city, even if he has lost himself. He will come by pity next, not pride. He will suggest that mercy is a short road that avoids the hill you must climb. Denethor's eyes are coins that have known too many hands. "And you," he says, "what road do you sell me?" "Work," he says, "and a chair you must not abandon." He looks toward the tower. "Your house will need you alive when the horn from the east fails to sound one last time." The steward flinches, as if a palantir has corrected him with a picture he hates. He looks at the wrapped glass. He looks away. He does not thank. He does not curse. He turns and leaves because some men can only choose the city if no one witnesses their choice. Night comes late, as if the sun does not trust the ground enough to leave. Fires along the Pelennor are counted and quieted. He orders all oil stowed, all ropes coiled, all panics given names and bedrolls. He tells 3 captains to sleep and threatens to carry them to their cots if they do not. 2 obey. 1 stares. He stares back longer. The captain sleeps. The hallow calls him with a pressure so gentle and so uncompromising that it feels like a child's hand gripping a father's thumb. He goes with Gandalf, with the same small escort, through the court where the dead tree has acquired a single silver leaf that repeats light back to itself without greed. The wardens bow with their eyes. The fountain speaks in 100 syllables of simple water. The law arranges him into stillness. Silence does a thing he has missed for centuries. It sets a table and invites him to sit without hunger. 3 visions arrive, as if they were simply better ways of seeing. In the first, he stands on the breach forever. Men live because he wills it, until his will runs out of temperature. The cold spreads like ink through paper. It reaches his throat. One day, he calls a halt that is meant to be a command to himself. The city hears it as surrender and breaks. Nothing spectacular happens. Roofs simply fail to be roofs, and names cease to stick. He saves many. He ruins meaning. When he dies, it is not even dramatic. In the second, he leaves the wall and walks the world like a straightened nail. Battles shrivel when he arrives. Princes surrender because the equation is bad and they can read. He discovers corruption early and lances it with a blade that carries no pus afterward. Roads straighten. Taxes appear on time. 10,000 children do not die of the small, stupid meannesses he hates. 20,000 grow into men who do not know how to carry choice. His banner is everywhere and carries no face, and he is proud and ashamed. When he goes, the structure he built leans, then falls, because men were standing up against his will, not their own. In the third, he is a guest. He holds lines. He gives posture. He blesses specific oaths when asked by their owners, who keep them as theirs. He makes matter honest where men have agreed what honesty costs. He is slow much of the time, and fast only where law asks for a sprint. He refuses fame like bad bread. He speaks less every year and is heard more. He leaves when the work that asked for him is finished, not because his oath is spent, but because it no longer fits the music. The visions do not advertise. They simply offer pages. He turns them with the same hand he used to hold a gate. He returns to the room with men in it. Gandalf's eyes ask and do not ask. The wardens wait, as if they have always done so at this exact moment of every day. The tree's single leaf reflects his face in miniature and makes it look almost kind. 3 paths, he says aloud, because he wants witnesses. Return, free agent, servant. He does not sell any of them shorter than they are. He names the prices. Memory fading if he goes. Autonomy kneeling if he stays under it. Schism if he walks between and takes men's choices for ease. He lays them out like coins. The world bleeds, he says. Blood buys time. Time lets law stand. Law allows men to build. I choose the path that spends me and keeps the men. Gandalf's breath is a sound a man makes when an old argument has just been won by someone he did not expect to agree with him. Say it, he says. I accept sanction, he says, voice even. I am Warden-Guest. I will brace, not recompose. I will not bind wills. I will not claim doom, not mine. I will lend posture only on request. I will touch matter as shield. I will add nothing to the song. I will remove nothing from it. I will leave when the hinge turns and men can hold the door without me. The wardens speak together. A soft, exact chord that makes the fountain behave for a moment. Witness. He feels something move then. Not weight, alignment. The cold in him jerks as if a leash has been taken up by a hand it recognizes as stronger than his. It yelps without sound and curls. A thin black thread lifts from the seam at his temple like smoke and thins, then thins again until it is almost not. It does not vanish. It knots itself where he can see it. A bead on the string of his oath, a reminder and a warning. The pain that follows is clean and finite. He holds still and lets it cut. The auramite on his shoulders changes color by the width of a breath. Not to white, not to silver, to something like daylight on water seen through leaves. Filigree appears where none was carved. A fine branching, a tree traced lightly, an eagle's wings threaded with veins. The emblems meet and do not crowd each other. They are not fused so much as introduced and told to be polite. He breathes out, and for the first time since the breach, the breath warms him. Gandalf nods, not as master, not as priest, as friend and peer and old man who will sleep at last. Boundaries, he says. He says them aloud so the city can hold him to them. Mercy, given where it steals from the enemy's economy and returns men to themselves. Denied where it feeds his mills. Orders, spoken and recorded. Nothing behind men's backs unless concealment saves lives without stealing agency. Power, lent, not imposed. Posture shared, never occupied. Doom, left to those to whom it was given. I will not take their lines to make better pictures. Witness, all large acts named and counted in council. Leash, worn gladly. If I tug, you pull. We will pull, the captain of the tower guard says, because someone should say it. I will pull harder, the healer says, because someone must threaten him with love. Then go, Gandalf says softly. We have a day to finish. He returns to the hinge and finds it a door again, not a mouth. The enemy fights like a bureaucracy that has learned a new form. It is less confident, more furious, and prone to mistakes where fury misfiles orders. He does not exploit rage. He harvests its errors with professional respect. Southrons lay down pikes and are bound and watered. One asks, in a language he learned long ago under a different sun, whether he will die later for this choice. He says in that tongue, you will live and spend the life as a debt to those you harmed. I will help find the ledger. Orcs surge with zeal born of orders written in hatred. He kills them without embalming his heart in words that would make them men. He keeps his promises to brutes by making none. The Witch-king's absence is not peace. It is a page flipped. Mordor's engines retract, reconfigure, point their mouths south where green banners ride into math that will hurt them. He does not send light to the field. He does not speak to kings whose ears are full of drums. He holds the city and counts the hours like coins paid forward to a gate he will stand in later, near ash plains and a mouth that has not yet learned to be a face. Near midnight, Orthanc makes its last clever bid. The wrapped glass is quiet. The voice arrives from a basin, where a woman washes a soldier's hair, whispers to her that the man is her son. She hesitates. Her hands falter. He is across the room and kneels where he is forbidden to kneel. He takes her wrists in his and says, "You know his name." She closes her eyes. Lines appear around her mouth and she nods. The voice goes, not with fury, but with sulk. He finds the device jammed in the rafters like a mouse and hands it to a warden with rope and lead. "Tight," he says. Twice. At dawn of the second day, the air itself seems to choose. The smoke lifts. The wind chooses west. The river slopes its glitter toward the city like a man offering bread. He strengthens nothing. He simply says, "Stand, one last time." And men discover that the word fits them without being forced. They hold. The field decides the rest. When the shouting thins into instruction, when spears are bundles and ropes are coils, when wounded sleep and dead lie with their jaws closed because someone cared enough to do it. He walks the walls with the quiet tread of a man checking his own workshop after apprentices. He lifts nothing. He scolds no one. He finds 6 places where pride has made a neat repair that will fail in rain and marks them with chalk and a tiny, almost apologetic arrow. At the houses of healing, he stands in the doorway and obeys his own law. A boy he sent away earlier sees him there and grins like a man who knows a church has kept its hours. The healer nods without taking her hands off a wound. He inclines his head as if an equal had saluted him. In the wedding room, the council assembles around a map that is now sticky with spilled broth and candle grease. Denethor's chair is empty because the man is elsewhere doing the work of having been wrong. Faramir leans one hip on the table and listens with his whole body. Imrahil keeps the room from turning into a sermon by asking good, small questions. "We will march," Gandalf says. He lays out the awful arithmetic. Not enough men to assault, just enough to dare, exactly enough to be bait. The stranger watches the numbers line up and keeps his mouth shut for 3 seconds to see if silence adds wisdom. It does. "We must pull the eye," Gandalf says. "We must keep it on fire and flags and daring, and away from a road that a pair of feet still walks. I will walk the second line, the stranger says, not the first. I will keep men upright when the eye presses. I will not write new rules on the ash plain. If a doom looks for me to take it, I will step aside and lend my breath to the man it comes for. Boundaries, Gandalf says, not to nag, to seal. Witness, says Faramir, because he has learned the value of saying things aloud. He uses one sign on the march, not light, not fear. He asks the west wind to hold its breath for 100 heartbeats in a shallow basin where sound would carry an ambush to ears too quick. The wind obeys like a horse that trusts a rider with a bad leg. The enemy's scouts ride past on the ridge above with faces set to contempt. The men make it through the slit of land and breathe after with laughter that does not waste water. They come to the plain where an eye looks like heat turned into geometry. He does not regard it. He regards men's hands on spear shafts and mouths going dry. He lends posture to the front rank, only posture, then withdraws. He hears the cold sigh and quiet. He takes it as a good sign and a trap boat. The mouth of Sauron rides with Parley's grin and papers. He stands in the second line and says nothing, while another mouth tries to make his heart a pen. He looks at the horse. The horse's eyes say tired. He makes no magic. He waits. The horse shies at the reek of its rider's breath, and the scene collapses on its own timbers. When the gate of the Black Land opens like a confession and armies pour like accounting errors, he does not build a wall with air. He trusts men. He tightens belts. He recalls the rhythm Gandalf taught and beats it out on the butt of his sword. He holds posture, then releases it like a breath at the right beat, so no man forgets he breathes with his own lungs. There is a moment when despair designed by experts moves in, numbered and well greased. He feels the temptation to become a miracle and says no, with the same tenderness he used at the Hallow. He lets the eye look through him to something small and stubborn behind his back. He whispers into the ash, walk, and the word goes nowhere useful and everywhere needed. After, when the ground becomes honest again and mountains behave like geology instead of grief, when the air reminds men that it has a sky and the sky chooses blue, when the city sobs like a chest that has forgotten how to breathe without screaming first, he returns to the gate he held. He counts the beams with his hand. He thanks them. It is not prayer, it is etiquette. He does not attend the coronation as spectacle. He stands in a shadow with masons and watches a sword touch a shoulder and a man become an office in a way that makes rooms feel safe. He nods once, as if some line has been brought level at last. The new king looks toward the shadow because good kings know where the weight sits in their houses. He does not summon. The guest does not step out. That is also how good houses work. By the fountain, under the tree, the leaf has become three. The wardens unhood their eyes and go about their day like men and women who have learned a piece of law and love it. He stands at the paving's edge and asks the Hallow for nothing. It gives him silence and a bench of light. He speaks his boundaries in public so law can hear. I will remain until the work that asked for me is finished, he says on the steps where bread is cut and without banners. I will hold hinges and walk edges. I will bless oaths into exactness when asked by their owners and bound by their costs. I will punish only where punishment returns men to themselves, and only with witnesses. I will not found a cult. I will not recruit to an army. I will not levy tax. I will not write songs about myself. If I break these, the wardens will name me and bar me. I accept this. Witness, the captain of the tower guard says, smiling like a man who enjoys a job that will be difficult. Witness, the healer says, rubbing her wrists as if she has lifted a heavy thing and likes how she feels. Gandalf, who has become lighter by having kept a promise he set himself centuries ago. Nods once, the movement of a man sealing a door he does not intend to reopen. You will be tempted again, he says. I expect it, he answers. I have set a chair for it, where it will not be comfortable. And is inserted. He walks the first circle at the evening when women sweep stoops and men make peace with their aches. He stops where the baker's boy leans on a barrel and tries to look like someone who does not admire the gold man. Show me your hands, he says. The boy holds them out. Flour, a healing blister, a new scar that looks like a bread score. Good, he says. Keep them dirty. That is how cities live. Above the gate, a new sigil hangs, a white tree in fine silver thread, an eagle in relief behind it, not grasping, sheltering. It is not his banner. It belongs to the city, and the city has placed it where wind talks to stone. In the north, a captain of orcs, who has learned to make maps, snarls and crumples a sheet, because the roads he drew no longer end in fear, reliably. In Isengard's ruins, a voice practices kindness in the dark until the kindness feels like silk and lies like a snake. In the east, a chieftain from the Harad studies a bound soldier treated with clean water and hates and envies at once. He will write letters. Among the dwarves, a master of gates writes a plan with a note. Consult the Warden-Guest about hinge geometry. He hates that he wants to, and he will. At night, he stands where the wall becomes cliff and looks at the stars without asking them for purpose. The constellations make patterns they have always made. If a man wants to see an eagle's wing holding a leaf, that is on him. He does not. He lets the lights be lights. When men see him in alleys, they make space for him without fear. When he does not appear for days, they do their work with a little more exactness. Because a man stood here once and said, "Witness," and the word made their hands honest. He writes letters to no one, folded into instructions. A drill to steady hands, a song to keep watches steady, a rule about oil and rope. He stamps them with a small mark, a branch, not a crown. When boys trace it in dust, they draw the tree first, the wings after, then rub both out with a boot, because heroes do not belong on floors. He does not leave when the first feast ends, or when the first law is written, with ink that smells like certainty. He leaves when the last hinge he promised to hold can be carried by the men who built it. He goes at dawn, not at noon, with his helm under his arm and the leash light because the hand holding it has chosen to open. He does not open a hole in the sky. He walks out the south gate like a man with errands, and no one stops him because guests should be allowed to go. A year later, a woman teaching children to sweep the first circle's gutters spells on a slate, "Warden." She asks what the word means. A baker's boy with new scars where fire taught him says, "It means a man held a door and didn't move in." The class nods like this is normal because now it is. The Hallow keeps his oath like a bead on a string. He is allowed to remember more than most who go and come. He spends those memories like coins on cities that do not know his name. He goes where hinges are. He stands where song needs edges. He bleeds where law must be paid in scar. He returns once, years later, to the fountain court, not to ask, to sit. The tree has leaves enough to shade a bench. A young captain nods and does not know him, which is right. The wardens pretend not to recognize the pressure of a footprint that once learned not to press. He is happy for a whole minute without work. Then he stands and leaves it there for someone else to find.